soon as he shot the flaming arrow. Needless to say, Zephyr was extremely worried about him. Thankfully, the island was being gentle with him to his face. But Zephyr knew he could hear the whispers just as well as she could. Zephyr pulled her furs tight around her as she made her way to the Great Hall. She returned a few courteous nods, but the streets weren't as busy as they usually were. The warmer months were past them now, and no one was spending time outside that wasn't needed. It only made the whispers harder to keep track of. She pushed the large doors open, happily inviting the warmth that quickly enveloped her. She shut the doors and wasted no time collecting 2 bowls of stew before making her way towards the back corner she always went to. Ethan was sitting there as always, close by the encampment of former outcasts. Thankfully most had been moved after the burial from the sad corner they had claimed into some of the cave openings just off the main room. They had mostly been used for small meetings or council proceedings, and various other rooms for the many projects that seemed to always be underway on the island. For now they served as living quarters to give the outcasts more privacy, and to make caring for the elders easier. But Ethan still kept guard, sitting at the table closest to the main cave that stretched back to the rooms. Zephyr set the bowls down in front of him. "Hey." "Hey," he replied, glancing at her for a moment before his eyes fell back to the table. She laid her hand on his shoulder, partially to balance herself as she took her seat but mostly to comfort him. "How are you feeling?" "Better." He took one bowl and spooned some stew into his mouth without Zephyr having to ask. Progress. It would have made Zephyr much happier if she couldn't see the distant look in his eyes. But it was progress. "That's good." Zephyr took a bite herself. "Any thoughts about tonight?" Ethan sighed. "Not even a little." Zephyr nodded. "That's okay. You don't have to know." Ethan pursed his lips. "You don't have to baby me, you know." Zephyr froze. "What are you talking about? You don't have to tiptoe around me like that. You don't have to tell me whatever I'm doing is right no matter what it is. The same thing everyone else is doing to my face, when I know for a fact they talk about me behind my back like I'm incompetent." "You think I talk about you behind your back?" "No." He dropped his spoon into the bowl. Sighing heavily, he scrubbed his face with his hands before brushing them back into his hair. They settled back down, one on the table and the other over Zephyr's hand, as he turned to face her. "No, that's not what I'm saying. You don't talk to me like that. You're real with me, and with everything that's been dumped on me he closed his eyes. You've been the only stable thing in my life since I got here. Or at least the only thing that feels stable to me, like." He paused for a second, searching for his words, but then groaned. "I don't know how to explain it. I don't want you to treat me any differently from how you always have. I don't want you to treat me like I'm broken." Zephyr bit her lip. You are broken, no offense. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I told you, I was wrong to push you the way I did. You're being too hard on yourself." "Yeah. What about you can't avoid your tribe forever?" Zephyr sighed. Gods, she regretted those words. His hand was still laying over hers, so she turned her hand around to hold his. "You can't care for your tribe if you can't care for yourself, too." Ethan scoffed and rolled his eyes, but didn't pull away from her. "Gods, where do you get all these philosophies?" Zephyr chuckled. "My dad." He smiled ever so slightly as he looked down at their intertwined hands and sighed quietly. "Yeah, well. Tell him they are very conflicting at times." Zephyr chuckled. "Probably because he's just making it up as he goes." "We all are." Ethan didn't respond. He kept his gaze on their hands, and slowly began rubbing the back of Zephyr's hand with his thumb. Zephyr found herself leaning over to lay her head on his shoulder. Maybe it was just all the emotionally vulnerable moments they had shared compiling, especially with Ethan's difficult experiences as of late, but the closeness just felt right in a way Zephyr couldn't explain. And she was done pretending she didn't feel it. After the emptiness she had seen in Ethan's eyes before, she didn't care. She wanted to savor every touch, every look, every smile, every chuckle, every good feeling she could muster out of him. Whatever it took. She felt him lean over as well, resting his head on top of hers. He sighed, but it sounded content. I don't know what to do, he whispered. Zephyr squeezed his hand. I know. It's okay. He hesitated. I don't know if I can make it tonight. Zephyr chose her words carefully. I can't say I'm surprised. But I also can't say I wasn't hoping you'd prove me wrong. I know. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. Everyone's going to be disappointed. They understand too. Doesn't make it better. Zephyr squeezed his hand. You've done great. We have what we need from you right now. Take it easy on yourself. The rest can wait. Eason sighed and lifted his head off of Zephyr's. The outcasts want answers too. Zephyr lifted her head as well. Eason was looking down at his bowl with tired eyes. Zephyr used her free hand to gently pull his chin towards her, and he looked into her eyes. The rest can wait, she softly repeated. He studied her for a moment, and then slowly nodded. All right. I think I'm just going to turn in for the night. He started to stand. Are you going to be okay? He gave her an empty smile. Yeah, I'm good. Just tired. Besides, I promised Osmond, Harver, and Oscar that we would talk some stuff out tonight. They're probably waiting for me. He softly kissed the back of her hand before letting go. Night. Zephyr smiled. Good night. She waited for him to make his way out of the great hall before sighing heavily. He seemed a bit better each day, but there was still work to be done. She wished she could follow him, but instead she had to make her way to the council meeting. She hoped there was at least a little truth in his words when he said he'd be okay. Maybe she'd stop by after the meeting, catch him up on what was said and check in on him. When she walked into the meeting room, her father, Snotlout, Fishlegs, and Roughnut were already waiting. Hiccup and Fishlegs were looking over some paperwork, possibly maps of the island from the shapes Zephyr could make out across the room. Roughnut was sitting next to Fishlegs, half paying attention to what they were saying and mindlessly gliding her fingers across the skin on the back of Fishlegs' hand and arm. Fishlegs would occasionally smile at her but stayed focused on their conversation. Snotlout was casually lounging further down the table, apparently repairing a tear in a tunic. They all glanced up when she walked in. Hiccup looked a little hopeful. Eason. Zephyr shook her head. Sorry, Dad. I tried. Hiccup's face fell a little, but he didn't look surprised. I thought so. It's all right, he'll come around eventually. He looked pretty comfy with you out in the hall, though Snotlout teased with a smirk while continuing his stitching. Zephyr crossed her arms over her chest. Just as comfy as you were in Minden's bed. Snotlout's face went red and his hands paused. His eyes flicked up and he glared at her. Zephyr smiled innocently. Roughnut laughed. You might want to see tough for that burn, Snot. Shut up, Rough, he muttered, furiously returning to his stitching. Zephyr snickered and sat next to Roughnut. Valka, Gobber and Irette slowly filtered in after her. What came next was the real surprise. Astrid walked in holding a cup of some sort of liquid, and then held open the door for Atterley, who was hanging off of Toughnut's shoulders. Toughnut was practically carrying Atterley, holding one of her hands to keep her arm around the back of his neck and keeping his other arm securely locked around her waist. Oh, gods, Hiccup muttered under his breath, concern clear on his face. He rushed around the table to help Toughnut get Atterley settled into a chair. Astrid put her cup in front of Atterley. Drink, she ordered. Atterley made an unpleasant face. It tastes like piss. Yeah, well, you're going to feel like shit if you don't drink it, Toughnut threatened. Hiccup cleared his throat. Well, I suppose I see where all the ale stores have gone, he jested. Oh, piss off, Hiccup. Atterley threw back a swig of whatever Astrid had given her and grimaced. Hiccup pursed his lips. Okay. Well, if that's everyone, I suppose we should get started. Excellent. Sooner I can get back to my ale. Atterley attempted to stand up but didn't make it very far. She fell back into her chair instead. Hiccup, I will be taking up your offer to absorb my tribe. We're all yours. Hiccup pursed his lips again. Atterley. Maybe we should wait until you're a little more sober to have this conversation. Atali shook her head. Won't change my answer. We can't survive on our own. We've nowhere to go. We're fucked, to put it frankly. She raised her cup. You're all we got. Congratulations. She threw back another strained gulp. She stared into her cup. Honestly, tough nut, what is in this? No one seemed to know what to say. Everyone just stared at Atali. No one had ever seen her this drunk before. It was honestly startling, at least to Zephyr. Thankfully Hiccup spoke up. All right, well, in that case, we'll start on some permanent residences. But we'll talk about this more later when Atali is feeling better. He shook his head as if to clear it. Anyway, Zephyr, how are the outcasts doing? Since Eason isn't here, you probably know better than the rest of us. Zephyr took her eyes off of Atali, who was still studying the contents of her cup. They're doing better, I think. The caverns help them feel less exposed. They're more worried about sickness though, with the draft and the moist air, especially after the 4 earlier in the week. I think most of them can make it up to the guest quarters now, so we may want to move them. Tomorrow, ideally. Hiccup nodded. Mom, do you think you can have rooms ready tomorrow? They already are, Valka assured him. I'll be sure to move anyone still on the first floor up to the second to make things easier. Great. Tough, can you help out? Ruff and I should both be there. The healing heart is mostly cleared out at this point. Perfect. That'll be the first priority for all available hands tomorrow. Hiccup looked down at his journal and flipped through some pages. All right, next order of business. I would really like to get a more solid number of everyone staying on the island through the winter with the Wingmadians and outcasts here as well. We were really lucky with our harvest this year, and I don't anticipate any issues based on my population estimates. But I would really like to avoid any more surprises. Fish legs, can you? Hiccup trailed off. His gaze turned to the back tunnel. Zephyr focused her attention that way as well, and could faintly make out footsteps approaching. Zephyr gasped as a white bird flew into the room, footsteps still growing louder down the tunnel. The bird lighted on top of Zephyr's chair, playfully nipping at her hair. Oh my gods, Orboda. Where have you been, girl? She reached up to scratch her head. We've been so worried about you. Oh, that's Orboda, Astrid mused. As in, Eason's bird? Snotlout asked. The one that brought the letter about the outcast attack. Did you find Eason, girl? Zephyr asked. She looked over her body. You must have, don't have any of the leather around you. Then that must be him running down the tunnel. The footsteps were quite loud now, and they could hear panting. Not long after Eason burst into the room as well. He ran straight to Hiccup, leaning over the table to try to catch his breath. Hiccup. You gotta read this. Hiccup hesitantly took the paper from Eason, muttering, Gods, not again. Zephyr ran around the table and pulled a chair up behind Eason. He fell back into it, leaning over his knees and heaving. The fear in his eyes frightened her. She put her hands around his shoulders and squeezed gently. So much for no more surprises, Astrid sighed, sharing a pained look with her husband. I know, Hiccup replied sadly. He took a deep breath and looked over the paper in his hands. All right, let's see, his face fell almost instantly. It's Dager. The room went uncomfortably silent. Hiccup fell into his chair as he continued to read. Everyone waited anxiously. Hiccup's hand slowly dropped to his lap, still clutching the letter. His eyes filled with tears. Hiccup. Son, what is it? Valka asked, reaching out a hand. Hiccup tried to steady himself. There's been a death in the Berserker tribe. The silence grew heavier. Zephyr's heart squeezed. No. Not again. She felt herself grow unsteady, and she fell against Eason's chair, sitting on the arm of it. Eason wrapped an arm around her waist to steady her. Zephyr looked down at him, and she could now see that his eyes were red and raw from crying. She could feel her own eyes filling with tears now, and she didn't even know who it was that died. Everyone else in the room was just as speechless and teary-eyed. It felt like the night they learned of the outcast attack all over again, but this time held a fear that wasn't quite so potent last time. These attacks were no coincidence. Someone was directly threatening and viciously attacking their allies with a purpose. They could no longer deny the fact that Newburgh was in grave danger. This was war. Hiccup threw the letter on the table and buried his face in his hands. Finally, Iret managed to ask the question that no one else was brave enough to ask. Chief. Who have we lost now? Notes. The next chapter is written and just needs to be edited, so I will have it posted in the next few weeks. Discord is still live for anyone that wants to join as well. https://discord.gg/nhwkm8t. Chapter 25, Enough is Enough. Notes. So I definitely meant to post this a week ago, but I kinda got distracted by a wedding. Not my wedding. Someone else's wedding. That I was in. So I am so sorry for the late update, and even more sorry for what you're about to read, my dear lovely reader. Enjoy. ****TW, attempted suicide *****. Chapter text. Hiccup fell into his chair as he continued to read. Everyone waited anxiously. Hiccup's hand slowly dropped to his lap, still clutching the letter. His eyes filled with tears. Hiccup. Son, what is it? Valka asked, reaching out a hand. Hiccup tried to steady himself. There's been a death in the Berserker tribe. The silence grew heavier. Ethan flinched. He knew what was coming. He had read the whole letter already in the presence of Osmond, Harva, and Oscar. They had been just as horrified as Ethan, even scared of what the implications were. He didn't wait around long to discuss with them because they all knew Hiccup had to see this letter as soon as possible, even better if they saw it before Council finished their now nightly meetings. His stomach churned as he waited for Hiccup to read the words that were already running circles in his head. Ethan noticed Zephyr sway beside him. She caught herself, but quickly lost her balance again, falling against the side of the chair she had pulled over for Ethan. He wrapped an arm around her waist to guide her to sit on the arm of the chair, and pulled her torso to rest against him. He looked up and met her eyes, glassy with tears and darkened by fright. Everyone else in the room was just as speechless and teary-eyed. He wondered if this is what the room felt like the night they learned of the outcast attack. More than anything, he wondered if they were thinking the same thing that he was. These attacks were no coincidence. Their friends were in danger, this island was in danger. This man wanted dragons, and he would do whatever he needed to get to them. But Ethan also knew the warriors in this room would not let that happen, no matter the cost. This was war. Hiccup threw the letter on the table and buried his face in his hands, tears freely streaming from his eyes now. Iret was the first to break the heavy silence. Chief. Who have we lost now? Hiccup dragged his hands down until they covered only his mouth and stared at the offensive parchment taunting them all from the table. He set his jaw and scratched his nose. Gustav, he sniffed. That bastard killed Gustav. And nearly killed Throg too. The room immediately grew tense. And then, just as quickly, everyone just deflated. Ethan had never seen them all look so despondent. Of all the allied tribes, it was impossible to ignore the fact that Newburgh was always the most optimistic, the most resourceful, and above all, the most hopeful. That all seemed to be gone now. Snap. Thwick. Off. Shhhhh. Thud. Ethan flinched. He had been where they are now for a long time. In the silence, Zephyr slowly reached her arm around Ethan's shoulders. She leaned to the side and rested her head on top of his. He could hear her heart pounding in his ear now, and could feel her chest quiver as she struggled to keep her breathing under control. He gently squeezed her waist and reached across her lap to hold her hand. She held on as if her life depended on it. We need to act. Everyone looked at Hiccup in bewilderment, except for Astrid, who scoffed. And what exactly is that supposed to mean? Hiccup looked her straight in the eyes. You and I both know what he's really after. So you're just going to hand it right over to him. What are you two going on about? Gobber interrupted. Astrid scoffed again and sat back hard in her chair, crossing her arms over her chest. He's talking about a suicide mission to hand himself over to this maniac. Just about everyone had a reaction of some kind to that simultaneously. Oh, absolutely not. Valka yelled. Respect, tough nut commended with a nod of his head. Just like your father, you dumbass. Gobber threw his hands in the air. Like that'll fix anything, Snotlout argued. Dad, no. Zephyr sat straight up and squeezed Ethan's hand tighter while the hand on Ethan's shoulder clutched his tunic. Not funny, Hiccup. Rough Nut chided. Come on, Hiccup, you're smarter than that. Fishlegs piled on. Irette, much like Ethan, was simply observing. Atali just shook her head. Would you all just listen for a minute? Hiccup yelled, slamming his hands on the table and standing fast enough to push his chair backwards. We almost lost Minden, we already lost Alvin, now Gustav is gone too and Throke has one less arm and a crippled hand. All from this one lunatic. No one else is dying while we sit back and hide. He scratched his nose again, started to turn away, but angrily gestured back at the letter. While I sit back and hide, or run, or whatever else. He told Alvin he wanted the Dragon King or whatever, and we all know what that means. It's the days of Drago all over again, but this time we don't have our dragons to help us. It's up to us. He leaned over the table and settled a bit. Just us. Ethan was shocked to see such an explosive reaction out of the peacekeeper that was Hiccup Haddock. And judging by the reaction of everyone else in the room, they knew he meant business now. Hiccup pinched the bridge of his nose and squeezed his eyes shut. Look, I'm not saying I run a suicide mission and surrender or whatever. But maybe it's time that we take the fight to him. Give ourselves the chance to steal the upper hand and shut him down for good. And then everyone jumped as the door to the meeting room creaked open. They all watched as Harver slowly peeked around the door. He cleared his throat and stepped into the room. All due respect, sir, but any fight picked with Boira is a suicide mission. Ethan blinked. Harver, what are you doing here? Harver looked nervously at the ground, unsure of how to explain himself. Osmond and Oscar and I, after ye read the letter and ran off for Chief Hiccup, we got to talking and we don't want to see what happened to Chief Alvin and Gustav and Throke happen to anyone else. Neither do we, Hiccup assured him. But if we let this Boira continue to run around the archipelago unchecked, I'm certain it will happen again. Ye canna stop him, sir. He's too dangerous, and he cares not for the people he leads. Harver looked scared and desperate as he tried to find his words. He tortures them, starves them to the edge of death and promises grand feasts if they kill enough people for his liking. Ethan remembered the crazed looks of the attacking tribe the night his father was murdered. Their deranged eyes stared back at him every night in his sleep. Harver. How do you know that? Don't get me wrong, Boira's tribe was clearly afraid of him. But that's a big assumption. And fairly specific, Hiccup added, suspiciously eyeing Harver. Harver looked to Ethan instead. Please, sir, ye have to trust me. Harver, you know I do. You've been behind me since the raid, day one. But I don't understand where this is coming from, where you got these ideas. We all agree Boira is bad, but that doesn't mean we should just let him keep running rampant. Ethan could feel Zephyr eyeing him at that admission, but he tried to ignore it, nor did he want to know exactly what her face looked like considering the side glances he got from the rest of New Berk's council. Ethan never did well with conflict, sure, but the time to be timid was long gone. As terrifying as that was, even Ethan could recognize it. Because I'd seen it, sir, seen it with my own eyes. Please, ye have to believe me. I canna watch him destroy another tribe. Not like that, especially not like that. Ethan's heart stopped. He slowly pulled his arm from around Zephyr, slowly brought himself to his feet, eyes never leaving Harver's frightened eyes, not even to blink. Harver. What do you mean, you saw it? Ethan could practically see the internal debate Harver was having with himself. But he never broke eye contact with Ethan. Ethan leaned over the table, lowering his eyes just enough to make his point clear, and hardened his voice, speaking slowly. Harver, I cannot stress enough how important it is that you are fully honest with me right now. Harver was clearly struggling to hold his place. Sir, I understand. Then I need you to start explaining yourself. Right now. Harvey seemed to be losing his internal debate. He broke eye contact with Eason and took a timid step back. Eason's stomach dropped. Eason looked to Snotlout, who caught his glance and nodded, and then to Toughnut, who did the same. He looked back to Harvey as the two stood and slowly made their way towards Harvey. Please don't make me do this. Harvey took another nervous step back as he eyed Snotlout and Toughnut. No, wait, I don't mean any harm. He reached towards the door, and that was enough for Snotlout and Toughnut to jump on him. Well, I've heard enough. Time to put those cells in the back of the caverns to use, Hiccup said. Snot and Tough smiled and started to drag Harvey back towards the door. Cells. Wait, stop. Everyone froze, and Hiccup looked directly at Eason. What? Hiccup, Harvey is still an outcast, one of my tribe. So until I officially surrender my tribe to you or I die before that's possible, please, let me handle my tribesmen my way. Was that the best way to handle the situation? Probably not. Was it what he said anyway? Apparently so. Might as well do as his father taught him and always stand his ground, because damn it was out there now. Hiccup raised his eyebrows. Eason's heart was beating out of his chest. But then Hiccup just puckered his lips approvingly and nodded his head. All right, fair enough. You know your men better than me. He held out his hand as if to gesture to Eason to continue. Eason nodded his head in thanks before glaring at Harvey. He chose his words very carefully. I'm giving you one chance. Because I know you can see the position you're in right now. He pursed his lips, making sure Harvey was listening. Once Harvey looked at him again, he proceeded. But I do believe that you mean no physical harm. And you brought yourself here voluntarily. So I am going to give you one chance, right here, right now. What did you mean when you said you saw Boira torture his tribe? Harvey grew somber. He dropped his eyes to the ground. And then the truth that Eason dreaded hearing came out. He fooled me, Harvey started. He promised me rank and security. He told me he was trying to find a better life for his tribe. Harvey looked back at Eason, eyes dry but swimming in sad darkness. He locked me in quarters where he asked me to stay and do my work, but I got out anyway. I saw the way he treated his people and I knew he was lying to me. I jumped ship on the first island I could. Eason dropped his head. So you're a spy? No. Harvey insisted. No, a refugee. I wanted away from him, I wanted nothing to do with what he stood for. I never planned anything to come of it, I just hoped I'd be able to hide long enough for him to leave and then somehow leave the island. He didn't even know that I left, I was never meant to leave the ship. Convenient, then how did you manage to do that, exactly? Eason could feel his anger boiling up inside of him. There was a small window in the room he locked me in. I managed to squeeze through it after they landed. Again, convenient. Harvey didn't seem to have an answer for that. Eason took a deep breath. Lock him up. Chief Eason. He brought himself to look back at Harvey, torn between the man that he had grown to know and the man that stood before him. I will make sure you're taken care of fairly, Harvey, but until I can be absolutely sure that you're not a threat, I have to do the right thing to protect my tribe and my allies. But I pray to the gods for your sake that you can prove that to me. Harvey took a shaky breath, tears finally falling from his eyes. Sir. I understand. Eason eyed Harvey one more time, trying to see if he could find anything in his face that gave away his true intentions. But Eason was too overwhelmed at the moment, the anger inside him was boiling over into something different, something much darker than simple anger. So he looked to Snotlout instead and quietly said, "Take him," before dropping his eyes back to the table. The room had disappeared from around him long before, but now that the silence enveloped him, every little movement was deafeningly close. Someone shifting in their chair, Hiccup scribbling something on a parchment, Zephyr slowly standing to no doubt comfort Eason as she always did. Snap. Thwick. Off. Shhhhh. Thud. He did this. Eason let an enemy into their tribe, onto New Burke. He endangered everyone. I am so sorry, he said. The words seemed to boom through the room, echoing his mistakes back to him. I need to go. They all stared at Ethan as he ran down the back cave. Zephyr had a really bad feeling. Zephyr hiccup started quietly, eyes on the cave. Do you know anything about Harvey? Zephyr thought back. I mean, Ethan had told me earlier that he was going to talk with Osmond, Harvey, and Oscar tonight. She tried to remember anything bad about him, but nothing came to mind. She shook her head. I don't know, he's always been really helpful. He's always been really respectful to Ethan, stood up for the other outcasts, he checks in with Ethan all the time and supports him, he's great at entertaining the kids to help out the young women. I guess it could have been a way to get close to Ethan, but he never seemed anything but genuine. I'm honestly shocked. Hiccup nodded his head slowly. Yeah, well, Ethan seemed pretty shocked, too. Has anyone else had experience with Harvey? I remember he was one of the outcast boys that helped move everyone out of the main hall back to the caves Roughnut offered. And he's been in plenty of time since to make sure they were taken care of. Stayed to chat with many of the lonelier ones as well, according to Runner Valka added. Wasn't he one of the ones to light some of the funeral pyres for the elders that passed? He was. Astrid agreed. And when some of the more obstinate New Burkians wanted to keep the outcasts from the communal stew, Harvey jumped in to protect them. The only one to jump in, if I remember correctly, until Ethan came in and broke it up. More attempts to win our trust? Irette asked. Hiccup shook his head. I don't know. He sighed. I guess we'll have to find out later. I want to talk to Ethan directly before we make any decisions. Despite everything else, Harvey at least seems to trust and respect Ethan, so we need to use that to our advantage. For now, everyone should get some rest. I'm going to make sure Snot and Tough have got him locked up for the night. He leaned over to kiss Astrid. I'll be home soon. They both turned to Zephyr expectantly. Zephyr turned to the cave, and then back to her parents. I really want to check on Ethan before I head home, if that's okay. Hiccup smiled and hugged her. That's my girl, he said. Let us know if you can't find him, okay? Zephyr nodded and wasted no time running out the same way Ethan had. He was clearly distressed when he left, and Zephyr could only imagine how much blame he was putting on himself after the things Harvey said. So the first place she looked was a natural choice. It should have been so easy to find him in the same spot he and she both escaped to when they wanted no one else to find them. It was so obvious. So needless to say, Zephyr was quite startled when she climbed the rocks and didn't find Ethan in their cave. And that quickly turned to fear. Okay, then his room. Where else would he have gone? Maybe he just wanted to lay down, try to sleep it off. So she started running, which very quickly turned to sprinting as hard as she could as her imagination ran wild of what he could be doing. Or what he could have already done by the time they found him. But when she burst into his room, she only found Oscar and Osmond. They both stood up quickly. What's going on? Osmond asked. Where is Ethan? Have you seen him? Zephyr was panting and her legs ached, but she was ready to take off again as soon as she knew where to go. I thought he was coming to see you guys. He did, but he ran out of counsel after Harvey. Never mind, you haven't seen him since then. He didn't come back. Osmond and Oscar shared worried looks. No, he didn't come back here. We've been waiting for him. Shit. Shit. Zephyr, what's going on? Osmond pushed further. Do you know where he could be? No, I don't, and that's what bothers me. I'm going to get my dad, you guys start looking, we need to find him before he does something stupid. Wait, what did Harvey do? Oscar asked. Zephyr was already running down the hall. I'll explain later. She almost turned, but she heard their footsteps run after her, so she didn't look back. She burst into her house and found her mother in the kitchen. She looked at Zephyr confused. No time to explain, is Ethan here? Zephyr said hurriedly. Astrid dropped what she was doing and approached Zephyr. No, he's not. You can't find him. No, I can't. Where's Dad? I'll get your father, you keep looking, all right? Astrid took Zephyr's shoulders and turned her back out the door, following her though and shutting it behind them both. Go, I'll get your father. Zephyr didn't argue. She took off back into the woods. So many of Ethan's words were running circles in her head, and the implications made her nauseous. Maybe the outcasts who wanted to jump off the cliffs had a point. There was no life to live anymore. So until I officially surrender my tribe to you or I die before that's possible. Of all the things that he had been through, all the tortures he endured, all the smacks in the face from the gods themselves. All of that piled on top of each other in just a few short months, it wouldn't take much more to push him over the edge. And Hava might have just done it. Zephyr almost vomited. She had to find him. Ethan. She choked out his name as she tripped on the underbrush. Ethan. She felt his necklace bounce against the skin of her collarbone as she ran. Goddamn, she should have ran after him right away. Why did she wait? What was she thinking? She could hear Osmond and Oscar calling for him somewhere off to her left. They must have been fairly close, so she banked right to spread their combined search area. She realized she was close to their hideaway now. Maybe he went back there after she left. It couldn't hurt to look again, right? So she ran towards the hideaway. And as she got closer, she heard a loud splash. Her heart stopped. She stuttered to a halt, listening closely, but the forest was still. She shivered. The waterfall. There was a huge drop to a spring below, and Zephyr wasn't sure how deep it was. But she knew the water was freezing cold. She sprinted across the last stretch of forest separating her from the spring, unlocking the clasp in her furs as she ran. Tears poured down her face, she knew she was running out of time already. She threw her furs over a branch at the bank of the spring and searched the water. Between the turbulence from the waterfall and the darkness of the woods it was hard to see anything in the water. The moon was bright tonight but the trees blocked its light from truly illuminating the spring. But then she saw something move under the water. Her heart nearly beat out of her chest. She started stripping as much of her clothes as she could. Osmond. Oscar. She yelled as loud as she could, knowing she'd need help dragging him up onto the bank. Osmond. Help. Gods, I hope they heard me. She shook out her body and took a deep breath. This was going to suck. She screamed for Osmond and Oscar one more time, took a deep breath, and dove into the water. The shock of the cold water made her gasp, and by instinct alone her body shot back up to the surface. But she saw what she needed to see. He was down there, she knew she saw him. She coughed out the water she accidentally inhaled as soon as she broke the surface. She heard Osmond yelling for her in the distance but his voice was getting closer. Osmond. Her voice wasn't as loud as before but she hoped he could hear her. I found him. I found him. Her body adjusted enough to the cold that she could take another deep breath. She dove again and found him right away. Wasting no time, she wrapped her arms under his shoulders and pulled him to the surface. She gasped as soon as she broke the surface. To her horror, she noticed that Ethan didn't. Thor Almighty. Come here, over here, Zephyr. She turned to find Osmond next to the branch with her furs. She swam over to him, dragging Ethan's motionless body with her. Osmond reached down to pull him out of the water so that Zephyr could pull herself out. What in the name of hell happened? Osmond asked. Don't know. Zephyr's teeth chattered so hard she thought they might break. OSSS Scar. He went to get some help. She looked down at Ethan. He was blue and cold, and his chest wasn't moving. She crawled over to his side and Osmond laid an ear over his chest. As he listened for a heartbeat, Zephyr grabbed his face. Don't leave me. Osmond sighed. Thank Thor, his heart's beating. Zephyr felt like the world was moving far too slow. Not breath th thing. Come on, Chief, you're not leaving us like this, Osmond muttered. He pounded on Ethan's chest. Come on. Come on. Zephyr's eyes never left his face. He was so blue. He was so cold. Like there was nothing left. She sobbed and leaned over, resting her forehead against his. Please. And then he coughed. Zephyr jumped up as Ethan coughed again. She pushed his head to the side so the water could fall out of his mouth easier. Osmond caught on and pushed Ethan up on his side. "Oh God," she sighed. "OTH, thank Odin." "You can say that again," Osmond agreed, clearly relieved. "Welcome back, Chief." He pulled off the fur vest he was wearing and draped it over Ethan's torso, then jumped up to grab Zephyr's furs and wrapped them around her shoulders. Zephyr hardly noticed. She was too focused on Ethan. Ethan took some gasping breaths and finally opened his eyes. He looked around with bleary eyes before he found Zephyr. "Zeph. It's okay. It's okay, I'm here. I'm right here." She grabbed his hand and cupped his cheek with her other hand. "I've got you, It's gonna be okay, I've got you." At this point she wasn't sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. But she could hear footsteps racing towards them, which meant help was almost here. I'm sorry." Zephyr stopped him. "No, none of that right now. Just stay awake, okay? Just stay with me." Ethan shivered. "Okay." Hiccup and Oscar burst through the trees. "Oh gods," Hiccup said. "We gotta get you two warm." He pulled off his own furs and rushed to Ethan's side. "Help me get him up, guys." They sat Ethan up and Osmond helped him put on his fur vest. They pulled him to his feet, and Hiccup wrapped his furs around Ethan before pulling one of Ethan's arms over his shoulder. Oscar quickly supported Ethan's opposite side. "Let's get to Tough Nut, he's not too far from here." "Go ahead," Osmond said, "I've got Zephyr, we'll move faster than you guys." Hiccup nodded in response as they started off with Ethan. Osmond ran over to Zephyr. He offered his hand to her, waiting for her to accept his help before touching her. When she took his hand, he reached his other arm around her back and helped her stand. "Careful, I've got you." "Thanks, Osmond." She was so exhausted, and as much as she wanted to say that she could walk on her own, she couldn't find the strength to lift her weight off of Osmond. "No need to thank me." Osmond made sure he had a good hold on Zephyr before they started off. "We owe a lot to Ethan, and he's a good guy. A better chief than he thinks he is, too. And we owe a lot to you and your parents." They caught up to the other three fairly quickly. What seemed like ages later, they dragged themselves into the healing hut, where Astrid was waiting for them outside. "What in the name of Thor? What happened?" Tough Nut jumped to his feet and ran forward as they staggered into the main room. "You're soaked, what the fuck?" "Inga. Gunnar. Somebody get some dry clothes and a shit ton of blankets. You, over there." He pushed Zephyr towards one corner of the room. "Strip. Now. You two," he ordered Ethan as he pulled him to the opposite side. "I mean, honestly, were you two trying to kill yourselves?" Everyone froze and turned to Tough Nut and Ethan. The latter recoiled and dropped his head. Tough Nut seemed to regret his words but was no less angry. Zephyr thought she heard him mutter something along the lines of not doing a very good job. However, she didn't have time to be mad about it, as her mom spun her around to face the wall and began pulling at her wet garments. After a flurry of activity while Astrid and Inga helped undress and redress Zephyr while Tough Nut and Gunnar did the same for Ethan, they wrapped the pair up in as many blankets as they could find and sat them in front of the fireplace. Tough Nut ordered them to stay put, and they all left the room to talk to Hiccup, Osmond, and Oscar who were waiting outside. Zephyr and Ethan sat in silence. Zephyr found herself intently focused on Ethan's breathing. His body wasn't as blue as when she initially pulled him out of the spring, and he was actually shivering in response to the cold now. But Zephyr wasn't convinced, she was still afraid that something would happen and he would leave her for good. He sighed and pulled his body over to the wall of the fireplace, leaning his back against it and pulling his blankets tight around him. He pulled the blankets up to cover his face from his nose down as well, keeping his eyes on the ground as if he was avoiding looking at Zephyr. All Zephyr wanted was to be close to him. The closer she was to him, the more sure she felt that he was okay, that he wasn't going anywhere, that he was safe now. The distance between them felt immeasurably large. She just wanted to make sure he was still breathing. She needed to make sure he was still breathing. She had to make sure he was still breathing. She dragged herself closer to him until she was firmly pressed against his side, but it wasn't close enough. So she curled herself up into a ball, legs resting on top of his thighs, and hugged his arm. It still wasn't close enough. She wanted to find a way to pull herself closer to him, but then he broke the silence. Zeph, I'm so sorry, I wasn't trying to hurt you. As if it wasn't already broken, her heart shattered. She looked up at him, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Is that what you think I'm upset about right now? She whispered. His eyebrows scrunched together. He turned his head slightly towards her. You're mad, aren't you? At me? No. I'm scared. She looked down at his chest, watching the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. She reached out a hand and felt his strong heartbeat beneath it. I was scared. I wasn't trying to scare you, either. She rested her head on his shoulder. I know you weren't. He lifted the hand she wasn't leaning on and started to reach it in her direction, but he hesitated. Her heart ached. She wanted to be closer to him, close enough to make sure he wasn't going anywhere. So she sat up and shrugged the blankets off her shoulders, ignoring Ethan when he started to protest. She climbed into his lap and rested against his chest, over his heart so she could hear its steady beating. It quickened at first as he hesitated, but eventually slowed, and he didn't protest again. Instead, he grabbed her blankets and laid them on top of her, pulling his blankets around her as well, and held her tight to his chest. He took a deep breath and finally relaxed. She felt gentle lips against her crunchy damp hair, soon replaced by his cheek as he rested his own head on top of hers. I'm still sorry I put you through that, he softly repeated. Thank you for saving my life. Again. He nodded. I'm pretty sure that was the first freezing cold pond I pulled you out of, she jested half-heartedly. You were the one that saved me from falling off a cliff. He chuckled. True. But you have saved me before. Nearly every day since Dad died. You've been there for me. You helped me through the worst days of my life. You saved my life every day. She took a shaky breath. I'm sorry I wasn't there today. That I didn't come sooner. He gave her a gentle squeeze. That's not your fault. I wasn't thinking. Zephyr took a shaky breath. She could still see his blue face, closed eyes, still chest, cold body. She felt the blood-chilling fear of losing him all over again. She blinked hard, trying to push the image far away. She focused on his heartbeat, still strong in her ear. She took a deep breath and tried to match her breathing to his. Sure. It's okay, I'm here. He hugged her tight and kissed her hair again. I'm not going anywhere. She begged her mind to believe his words. Yeah. She hesitated, a little afraid of the answer to the question that popped in her head. Am I the only reason you have left? She could tell just from his hesitation that he understood what she meant. And that hesitation made her very scared that he would say she was. She didn't want to be his only reason to live. She wanted to know he had more to fight for. She wanted him to feel a purpose, to have a goal, a direction to work towards. Please be honest with me, He took a breath. Okay. He paused and kissed her head again, as if thinking through his words. I have other things to live for, I know I do. I have my tribe, and my allies. I want to know that they are safe and well cared for, and I can't do that if I'm gone. I still don't know if I'm the best choice to lead them, but if they want me to, I guess I have to try. He paused and leaned to the side. Curious, Zephyr lifted her head to find him looking at her. But Zeph, you're a big reason, too. Maybe the biggest reason I have. Yet again Zephyr felt the crushing ache in her chest. A part of her was relieved that the entire weight of Ethan's existence didn't rest entirely on her shoulders. But at the same time, something in her longed to let him know she needed him to be here. She wanted him to have purpose, but hearing him say those words made her want that purpose to be her. She wanted him to want her, as much as she was realizing she wanted him. She reached up and brushed her fingers along his cheek. She combed his damp hair away from his face with her fingers. She rested her hand against the side of his head and pulled him slightly towards her. She leaned in closer to him and tilted her head slightly, a movement that felt so natural when he did the same. And she kissed him. Immediately everything in that moment just felt right. Sitting next to the fire, wrapped in a blanket with him, snuggled into his chest with his arms around her. It felt safe and comfortable and right, like this was exactly where she was meant to be, and exactly who she was meant to be with. When she pulled away from him, he blinked in surprise. She softly giggled and rested her hand against his cheek. He smiled at her, a goofy lopsided taken by surprise kind of smile that made Zephyr's heart flutter. She smiled back and finally relaxed, snuggling back into his chest. He hugged her tight and rested his head onto hers again, sighing happily. They didn't even care that they were caught in that position when everyone else came back into the room. Chapter 26, The Consequences of War. Notes. I'm back with pain. A chapter. Enjoy, my lovely readers. TW, discussion of suicidal thoughts and attempted suicide. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Ethan and Zephyr waited as Osmond and Oscar took in what they had just told them. The silence made him feel incredibly uncomfortable as he waited for his two confidants to berate him, accuse him, belittle him. He was still drowning in his guilt over letting a traitor on that ship. He wanted to believe that Harver was innocent, that he needed refuge just like the rest of them, but he didn't know if he should. Zephyr must have sensed his uneasiness. She slid her arm around his and rested her head on his shoulder. He looked down at her and half smiled, then leaned over to kiss her hair. He was glad she was here. He couldn't have done any of this without her. Not just filling in the bits of his story for his tribesmen, but everything since he brought his dwindling tribe to New Berk. And after she pulled him from the spring last night, he truly did owe her his life. And then before he could even begin to wrap his head around what had happened, she had kissed him. And he didn't have a clue what it meant for the two of them, he didn't know what they were or how he should act around her, he didn't even know how to start that kind of conversation with her. He was pretty sure they were towing a dangerous line for the sake of their reputations with how physically close they had been since last night. But Zephyr didn't seem to care, and Ethan didn't either. Because the one thing that Ethan did know was that the only thing keeping him in the rocky but semi-stable mental state he found himself in was Zephyr. Those feelings of helplessness were still creeping around in his mind, and his greatest fear now was losing himself like he did last night. That darkness was unlike anything he'd experienced before, and it shrouded him out of nowhere. It took control before he could think about what he was doing, as if he'd forgotten everything important to him, as if he'd lost every bit of himself. And that's what scared him most of all. He still felt like he was desperately clutching onto the cliff's edge with his fingertips. He was terrified to find out just how little it would take to make them slip. He felt guilty clinging to her like that. She must have had her own demons to contend with. He still remembered the wild fear in her eyes up on the cliff's edge at Old Berk just months earlier. He wondered if the fear consumed her at times like the darkness had consumed him last night. And if it did, then who was he to lean on her and expect her to hold them both up? And yet, his fear of being lost again was stronger than his guilt. Maybe it was selfish, but right now he didn't know how else to survive. So he took a deep breath and focused on Zephyr, the sweet, mossy scent of her hair, the way she firmly held onto his arm, the way she traced patterns on his hand, the easy rise and fall of her chest. He kept all his focus on her and let her ground him. So Harver isn't even one of us? Osmond asked. Ethan pulled himself from his musings and shook his head. No, he's not. He came off the same ship as those deranged savages. And I couldn't even tell. Don't be so hard on yourself, Chief, I couldn't either. You know how your dad was, he'd welcome first and ask questions later. It's the outcast code. We had new people joining and old people leaving our tribe all the time. If Harver wasn't screaming and waving whatever he could get his hands on as a weapon that night, I'd have believed he was one of us too. Ethan sighed. Yeah, I guess. You didn't do anything wrong, Chief Osmond insisted with more force. Ethan rubbed his face with his free hand. Thank you, Osmond. I'm fine, really. I'm just anxious to get down there for this interrogation. I want to make sure he really was just trying to run away. I'll feel better when I have more answers. There were other things he wanted to say to them, but not in front of Zephyr. Actually, we're running a bit behind, he said to her. Do you mind running ahead of me to let them know we're still coming? I really don't want them to start without me. Zephyr hesitated, meeting his eyes and studying him carefully like she always did nowadays. She pursed her lips, apparently she didn't like what she saw. Please? He pushed further. I'm fine, I promise. I just have some questions I want to ask them. But I really don't want to miss anything. Zephyr studied him a little longer, then sighed. Promise. He smiled and cupped her cheek in his hand. Promise. He leaned over and kissed her forehead. I'm right behind you. He pulled away, but she grabbed his neck and pulled him back down. She pressed her lips hard against his, burying her body deep into his chest. Before Ethan could catch up, she was already pulling away. His skin tingled where she pressed into him, and his arms ached to pull her close again. But she backed away before he could catch her. Just to make sure you don't go running off into the woods alone, she joked with a wink. And then she disappeared down the hallway. Maybe towing the line was an understatement. Maybe blatantly stepping over the line without a second thought was more accurate. Ethan could feel a red-hot fire in his cheeks. She's something else, Osmond said with a smirk. Oscar chuckled. Ethan scratched his beard in a sly attempt to hide his smile. Yeah, that's one way to put it. He cleared his throat. All right, seriously though. I wanted to give you guys a heads up. Last night before Harver came in, Hiccup was talking about launching an attack on Boira. I'm not saying you guys or any of the others have to join, but I'll be going. Anyone else is more than willing to do the same. Oscar and Osmond shared a look. Ah. Chief. I know, Boira is crazy and his tribe is even more so. But we'll be under Hiccup's lead, and we'll be ready for a fight this time. That's great, yeah, but... Chief, I don't know if you going is such a great idea. Osmond was trying to tread lightly, but he and Oscar clearly had the same concerns. And that was why he didn't want Zephyr here for this conversation. I'm not doing this to get myself killed. And I'm sure you'll go in believing that, Osmond admitted. He met Ethan's eyes evenly and leaned closer. But as your friend, Ethan, I am begging you to think carefully about this. Being in the thick of it can change your mind before you realize it. Ethan felt the darkness mocking him from the back of his mind. Believe me, I know, he assured him. But he killed my father, Osmond. He is to blame for all of this. For displacing us, for destroying the Wing Maiden culture, for Gustav's murder, and he's going to go after the Berserkers. And maybe if I go, I can make sure Hiccup makes it back alive. His eyes fell to the floor for a moment. Maybe I can keep Zephyr from the same pain that I've felt. Osmond nodded his head slowly. He stood and grabbed Ethan's shoulder firmly, nervously smiling. Then believe me when I say that if you decide to go, I will be glued to your side to make sure you don't do anything stupid. Maybe I can make sure you come home to her as well. As will I, Oscar added. We'll stand with you, Chief. When he walked into the Great Hall, Zephyr was sitting with her parents towards the back of the large room. She turned her head immediately when the doors opened, and relief washed over her face. Ethan tried not to feel too guilty, he knew his actions the night before had scarred her as well. She jumped up and wrapped her arms around him as he approached their table. He held her close. I told you I was right behind you. I know, she said sheepishly, not letting go. Hiccup smiled and gestured with his head to the nearby hallway that led down to the dungeons. Ethan, Zephyr, and Astrid followed, but then he took a turn into one of various small alcoves a ways down from the main hall. Hiccup turned to Ethan. Are you sure you want to do this? Ethan pursed his lips. He squeezed Zephyr, who still had her arm around his waist, to give him strength. To be honest, I don't know. But I know I need to be in there. I'm not going to harm him, Hiccup assured him. I know. But I need to hear everything. From his mouth. I need to watch him explain. Hiccup nodded. I can understand that. Do you have questions you want to ask him? Ethan thought for a moment. Oh, he had plenty of questions. So many that it was overwhelming. Words swirled so fast around his head that it made him dizzy, so fast that he couldn't manage to reach out and catch any of them. Too many to put any particular one into words. Hiccup gently interrupted Ethan's thoughts. Ethan nodded. Hiccup smiled. It's difficult, I know. Especially when the subject of the interrogation is so sensitive and close to you. Ethan wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't used to anyone being so understanding and patient with him, or at least being so vocal about it. He definitely wasn't used to feeling understood. And here was Hiccup, practically reading his thoughts. Not only that, but he was so soft-spoken, so sincere, so gentle in a way Ethan's father had always tried to be but never could quite get right. Have you carried out an interrogation before? Hiccup asked. Ethan shook his head. Never. Well, you did a great job last night, especially being caught off guard like that. If you can keep that same tone, you'll do just fine. I can lead, but don't be afraid to jump in, all right? Ethan's mind was still swimming with incoherent questions. But what if I can't think of anything to say? Hiccup shrugged. It'll come to you. Starting off is the hardest part, but I'll do that part for you. If you think of something, say it. If not, I'll take care of it all. You don't have to be the one taking charge of the questioning to get the answers you want. I know you know that, or you wouldn't have asked to be in the room just to watch him answer everything, right? Ethan nodded again. Exactly. So, if you don't feel the need to ask anything, don't worry about it. But if you feel the need to take over completely and have me melt into the wall, Hiccup said with a chuckle, then do it. Or anything in between. Yeah, we need answers about Boira, but I know that this interrogation is going to be much more important for you than it will be for any one of the rest of us. So I want to make sure you get what you need out of it. We're here to support you. Ethan nodded slowly, taking in the advice. He was caught off guard by the support comment. It's not that he never had support before, but the outcast tribe also wasn't so forthright about it. Someone crossed you. The outcasts have your back. Need someone killed. No questions asked. They always fought first and never asked questions later. But at the same time, most people kept to themselves. There was a camaraderie, but it only went so far. Comfort was not in their vocabulary. This was a whole new world to him. He had Zephyr with him, arms still locked lovingly around his waist and head nuzzled into his chest. Hiccup treated him more and more like a son with each passing day, to the point that calling him just Hiccup felt wrong for completely different reasons now. Even Astrid was protective of Ethan, standing up for him when people talked negatively about him and praising him when he did anything typically uncomfortable for him. Thank you. For everything, I mean, not just this. He felt his eyes sting with tears. I know I haven't been the most gracious guest. And I'm sorry for that, for my behavior. He felt Zephyr squeeze him tighter. He kissed her hair to let her know he felt it. Astrid reached out to touch his arm. You have no reason to apologize. You've been through more than anyone should have to endure. Family doesn't fault you for that. They help you through it. The tears were dangerously close to falling now. Family. I don't know much about having a family, I guess. Ethan tried to smile. Something tells me you'll learn pretty quickly, Astrid assured him with a wink. Zephyr tried to bury her face deeper into Ethan's chest, though he wasn't sure if it was out of support or embarrassment. Either way, he smiled and squeezed her again, turning his head away from Astrid and Hiccup to wipe his eyes as he did. He turned back to them. Thank you. He took a deep breath. All right, let's do this before I change my mind. We wouldn't think any less of you if you did, Hiccup assured with a smile. I know. And he did, Ethan fully believed it for once. But I have to do this. For Dad. For my tribe. For me. I need to do this. And we'll be right in there with you, Astrid said with a smile. Hiccup nodded. Absolutely, wait, we. He looked at Astrid, a bit bewildered. Absolutely not. Oh, come on, you said he wasn't dangerous. Yes. To convince you that I didn't need extra backup. But I'm your intimidation factor. Not with a baby. Astrid, I thought we agreed we weren't taking any chances. Hiccup already sounded tired. Zephyr chuckled and pulled Ethan out of the room and down the hallway. He cleared his throat as they turned down a bend in the cavern. Your mom is going to win this one, isn't she? She usually does. Dad has learned to pick his battles. If he's smart, he'll stand down. They stopped just before a large wooden door that was set in a door frame cutting into the rock, blocking off whatever was behind it. Zephyr turned around and jumped into Ethan's arms, locking her arms around his neck and kissing him like she did earlier in front of Osmond and Oscar. When she pulled back, her smile was wide and bright, making the blue of her eyes shimmer like the gentle waves of the ocean in the sunrise on a calm morning. I'm so proud of you. I have you to thank for that. He smiled, trying to stamp down the guilt. Zephyr rolled her eyes. You have to give yourself more credit. You're stronger than you think. Ethan's smile faltered. The darkness taunted him again. Zeph, She grew serious and immediately began searching his eyes. What is it? He hesitated. You can tell me, she reassured him. I know. She waited patiently as the darkness laughed at him. I'm just nervous, is all. She gave him a sad smile. I know. And that's okay. But we're going to figure everything out, all right? He knew she was talking about Harvey and all the questions surrounding him, but he let himself believe she was talking about the darkness. He nodded. I know we will. She mirrored his nod. Good. She slipped her hands into his and gently squeezed. So. Just do what my dad always tells me to do. Take a deep breath, and fake it until even you believe you've got this. And eventually you really will. They heard footsteps approaching and turned to find Hiccup following behind a very pleased Astrid with an axe slung over her shoulder. Ethan curiously eyed the axe. Had Astrid not been pregnant, he would have been more concerned for Harvey's sake. But he figured Hiccup wouldn't allow her to do anything too dangerous with it. Maybe it was just her intimidation factor. Wow, Zephyr mused, he even let you bring the axe. Oh, I didn't let her do anything. Hiccup shrugged his shoulders as he sarcastically sauntered over to the door. I'm just the chief, it's not like I actually have any power on this island. No, the chief doesn't make the rules. He shook his head and looked at Ethan. Any chief that has a chiefess doesn't answer to himself, he answers to her. Remember that before you marry. Astrid flicked the back of his head. He winced and rubbed the spot as he turned to Zephyr. And I suppose I should assume you're coming in with us as well. It's part of the job, isn't it? I have to learn how to do it if I'm going to be your successor. Zephyr smiled innocently. Hiccup muttered something under his breath that Ethan couldn't quite make out. Something about the gods hating him. He shook his head and turned to Ethan. All right, this is your interrogation if you want it to be. Any requests? Ethan thought for a moment. Does he know we're coming in now? Hiccup shook his head. We don't give them warning. Not unless we want to give them the chance to prepare. Or the peace of mind that there's an end to the solitude. He'll be where we left him, chained to the back wall and sitting on the floor. Ethan nodded. Zephyr and I will go in first. You and Astrid do whatever you usually do. I just don't want to miss anything. I want to see his reaction, start to finish. Hiccup nodded. If we cross a line, you can stop us. Like you said, he's your tribesman. You be the judge. Ethan took a deep breath. Okay. Hiccup smiled and squeezed his shoulder. I'm right behind you. You can do this. Ready? When Ethan nodded, Hiccup unlocked the large wooden door before them, revealing a long cave just like the one they had walked down. Multiple smaller wooden doors with barred windows lined the cavern walls at random intervals. It looked just like the hall with all its meeting rooms, but these had locked doors. Zephyr must have caught Ethan's curious looks. Old Whispering Death cave systems are so cool, she whispered to him with an excited smile. It was the same giddy smile he remembered seeing on her back at the treaty signing as she showered Atterley with questions. After locking the door behind them, Hiccup tossed the keys to Zephyr. Ninth cell, he said. You two go ahead. She nodded and flicked through the keys until she found what she was looking for. She took Eason's hand and led him down the cave. After Hiccup mentioned the 9th cell, Eason noticed the runes carved into the doors. They paused just after cell 8, where Zephyr squeezed his hand before letting go. She stepped up to the next door and unlocked it. Eason swallowed hard against the bile creeping up into his throat. Zephyr slid into the room and casually leaned against the wall, crossed her arms over her chest, and propped her foot against the wall behind her. Eason crossed in front of her and leaned next to her, hands in his pockets as he stared down Harver chained to the floor in front of them. The cell was a decent size, so there was plenty of room between them and Harver. The chains were long enough that he could stand and pace if he wanted to, albeit a very short pace, but not near long enough that he could touch them. He could probably spit on them, but Harver wasn't that kind of man. At least, not the Harver that Eason knew. Whether those two Harvers were the same was an entirely different problem. Harver watched them nervously. Coming face to face with him again stirred up a flurry of emotions and thoughts and questions. The whirlwind in his head kicked up wisps of the lurking darkness. He'd had plenty of practice suppressing bad thoughts over the time he'd spent here on New Burke, but this darkness couldn't be suppressed. It was too strong for that. But he couldn't let it drown him like last night either. So then let's try something new. Instead of smothering it, he channeled it. He allowed it to fuel his anger and determination. He gave the darkness direction. Harver quietly spoke. Chief. Don't hesitate. Speak. I stand by my words, Harver. Eason kept his eyes locked on Harver's face, ignoring the surprise of how strong and steady his voice was. Every one of them. Harver gulped. But to Eason's surprise, he almost caught a glimpse of trust in Harver's eyes. As if he was truly just a falsely accused man looking to his chief to pardon him. As if he had a long-standing relationship with his chief that he knew would overcome the suspicion of circumstantial evidence. And it made Eason's blood boil that he would even consider that kind of understanding existed between them. They listened as Hiccup and Astrid's footsteps echoed down the cavern, growing steadily louder. They paused just outside the door until the echoes scattered into silence. Until Astrid let out a deafening battle cry and chucked her axe into the room, hitting its mark less than a hand's length above Harver's head and embedding deep into the wood plank the handcuffs attached to. Harver may have pissed himself, but Eason wasn't entirely sure. You could have hit me. His voice cracked and he made no attempt to hide his fear. Interesting. Zephyr chuckled. Nah, she missed on purpose. This clearly did not make Harver feel better. Astrid wandered in with a smug smile, taking her place next to Zephyr as Hiccup entered. He walked with a confident strut that Eason had never seen on him before. His face was set in a dark skull, hands curled into fists at his side. He stopped in front of Harver directly in the middle of the room, being sure to step heavily down on the rock so the metal in his prosthetic made a distracting clunk with his final step. Harver grew pale as his eyes immediately fell to Hiccup's missing leg before looking back up to his face. Normally I would say she could do much worse to you than that. But I'd rather take care of you myself, Hiccup growled, crossing his arms over his chest. Harver shivered. Eason was fascinated by the drastic change in Hiccup's mannerism, but he forced himself to focus on Harver's body language. Who are you? Hiccup spoke with a force that allowed his voice to bounce off the walls and boom back at Harver. Harver still said nothing, though by the look on his face and the quiver in his chin it seemed more out of stunned fear than obstinance. Silence won't help you, Astrid threatened. Hiccup simply repeated his question. Who are you? Harver. How old are you? 23. What's your trade? I don't have one. Then why did Boira hire you? What grounds did he have to offer you rank with no trade? I don't know, he asked. That I learn cartography. Learn cartography? From what background? I don't have one, I just. Cartography takes years of practice to reach mediocrity. Why would Boira hire you in a cartography position with no background whatsoever? Harver looked more and more bewildered with each question Hiccup fired at him. It seemed like an odd tactic, knowing the kind of man Hiccup was. Why he was asking Harver about Boira's thought process outright with no warm-up was lost on Eason. He did find it interesting Harver seemed to try to answer the questions, he just wasn't sure if that meant Harver truly didn't know the answer or if he couldn't think of a quick enough lie to play along with. Harver continued to struggle, grasping for answers. I mean, he never really paid me, he only provided food and shelter. So he didn't hire you? I never said he did. I said he tricked me. Eason thought back for a minute. Well, technically that's true. Hiccup didn't hesitate. You said he promised you rank and security. So he expected nothing in return. Harver seemed to be getting frustrated. Fine, I suppose a business deal was arranged in which he asked me to learn cartography and draw up maps for him, eventually in exchange for rank and stable food and housing. Hiccup started to pace in front of Harver. See, I'm still struggling to understand why he would do that, when you also claim to have no experience whatsoever. It started to dawn on Eason what Hiccup was doing, or at least he thought it did. Simply put, he was trying to poke holes in the story to see how Harver reacted. Maybe to fluster him into giving up small details when the questions became easier, maybe to frustrate him into blurting out the truth. Either way, Harver was definitely getting flustered. Harver sighed in exasperation. I don't ken, the man isna right in the head. I can't always follow a sane man's thoughts, let alone whatever he has brewing up there. He said his cartographer died in a fire and he was desperate, being in unfamiliar lands. Harver paused. Come to think of it, the cartography bit wasn't even the initial offer. It came up while he was first leading me to the boat. What was the initial offer then? Harver looked away, seemingly trying to remember. Just, an advisor. For the archipelago. He said that what that meant would depend on what we run into or something like that. He shook his head. I never even mentioned map making, he just brought it up after I had already agreed to go with him. And why would he do that, exactly? Harver shrugged. Keep me occupied, I suppose. Maybe he hoped it'd keep me too busy to snoop around. Eason had to admit, it was starting to become a believable story. He almost let his guard down. Either way, he could feel himself wavering. He found himself thinking back to when he first found Harver. Eason had involuntarily journeyed back there since he left the island, not even in his own mind. He had worked so hard to shove all of those terrible memories away where they could never touch him again. Immediately, he tried to push them away again, almost like a reflex. Then again, if he could focus on his memories of Harver, perhaps he could find something to tell him whether Harver was friend or foe. He shivered. Recalling those memories purposefully went against his own instincts to preserve his sanity. But the darkness still taunted him, dared him to dive in head first. Cautiously, he let himself listen. As they closed the distance to the man, Eason picked up a stone and threw it his direction to catch his attention. He spun and locked fearful eyes with Eason, who waved him over. But the man didn't move. Eason tried again, but the man still didn't move. Eason groaned and then turned to the girls, nudging them behind a bush. Stay here, don't move. They knelt down as Eason turned back to the man, glancing around to check for enemies before joining him. He stiffened as Eason fell against the building he was hiding behind. What's your name? Eason asked. The man sputtered, What? I'm Eason, son of Chief Alvin, but I'm sure you know that already. But I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. What's your name? He hoped spelling everything out for the poor guy would give his head a chance to catch up. The man blinked, but after a pause, said, Me. I am Harver. Well, the cowering made sense if he was hiding from Boira. Obviously he wouldn't have recognized Eason, unlike he had assumed. But he had hesitated when Eason asked about his name. He could hear the darkness taunting him. Dumbass. Absolute dumbass. Of course he wasn't one of you, he didn't recognize you. You fed the lie straight to him, handed it to him on a silver platter all wrapped up nice with a bow. Eason's blood began to boil again. Nice to meet you, Harver. I need your help. My help? Yep, your help. I've got two scared little girls hiding back in the trees. I need you to carry one and follow me. There's a group of more outcasts waiting on a ship in the northwest shipyard, they'll be safe there. And so will you. Harver looked paler than the moon. Outcasts. Eason flinched. He didn't even recognize the tribe name, how could you have missed that? What is wrong with you? Do you even care? It was so obvious. Ethan clenched his teeth until his jaw hurt. Well, we wouldn't want to invite the enemy, now would we? No, of course we wouldn't. Who would do such a thing? Isn't it so ironic, Ethan? Isn't life funny like that? Ethan's body was vibrating with rage. What he wouldn't give to wrap his fingers around. In an instant, the anger turned to fear. That was not the kind of man Ethan was. This was getting too far out of hand. But wouldn't it feel so damn good? No, don't listen to it. Focus. He hesitated when Ethan asked his name. He probably gave a fake one. By why? Why bring you aboard, then? Hiccup pushed further. If he was so worried about you snooping around, why bother? Harver was clearly growing agitated again. He was sitting with his legs stretched out and head rolled back against the stone wall. He waved his arm in the air sarcastically, making his chains clang against the ground as they moved. Cocky bastard overestimated himself. Like I said, he's insane. I can't explain his mind. You may not be able to explain his mind, but I'd wager you can explain your own. Zephyr turned her head slightly at the sound of Ethan's voice, but Hiccup and Astrid didn't react. Ethan crossed his arms over his chest but otherwise didn't move. What's your real name? Harver blinked at Ethan. It isn't Harver, is it? Ethan watched the panic grow in Harver's eyes as he sat up a little straighter. I remember when I first saw you that night. When I asked your name, you hesitated. So what is your real name? Harver seemed to recoil into the wall behind him. Argo. Why change your name if you claim to be innocent? Harver, Argo. Dropped his head. That name is what Boira knows me as. Just another disgrace to add to my past. I was ashamed, I wanted to start over. So this was a crime of opportunity, then. Ethan hoped accusing him directly would make him snap and start slipping. Is it a crime to want a safe place to rest, sir? Ethan shrugged sarcastically. I don't know, is it a crime to raid someone else's home to get it? Why did you think Boira was that safe place? Sir, I didn't know his true intentions, I didn't think him an evil man. He told me he was run out of his home and needed a new place to settle his people. So why did he pick you? Ethan's voice was sharp, cold, and strong. He could feel his blood boiling again, frustrated that he wasn't getting the answers he wanted. Harver was close to tears. I don't know. He spoke the words crisp and slow, locking eyes with Ethan for emphasis. He seemed to choke back a sob and dropped his head. But whatever it was, I regret it deeply. That monster does not deserve to walk this world. He does not deserve to control the people he has enslaved. I was selfish to run, I know I was. But what could I have done to help them on my own? Ethan could see tears running down Harver's face now. And just like that, he felt his guard slipping again. He saw flashes of Harver from that night flipping through his head so fast he could hardly focus on them each. All right, so can you help me? The man looked back to the trees, over towards the village, and then back to Ethan before nodding. Maybe he chose his loyalties at that moment. Alvin cried out, and Ethan lunged forward. But just before he managed to leave the shadow of the hut, two strong arms wrapped around his chest and pulled him back. Sir, no, you can't let him see ye. It's not worth ye being caught too. He hadn't stopped Alvin's death, but he had stopped Ethan's. That's my father. He can't. He can, and he will, sir. He's a madman. And ye have a ship full of people waiting for ye. Of children and women and defenseless injured folks that need a leader. Sir, you are that leader. I beg ye, be smart about this. He claimed to do it for the sake of the innocent. Your people need ye, sir. Harver was the only reason Ethan made it back to that ship. Snap. Thwick. Off. Ethan flinched. Why did you come after me? Harver paused. Pardon? He asked timidly. Ethan realized that he had stepped away from the wall and was now standing between Hiccup and Harver. He was practically leaned over Harver, in fact. He felt his hands balled into fists at his sides to the point that his knuckles began to ache. He straightened up and took a step back. Do you remember our first encounter? He spoke slow and low, his voice dangerously close to a growl. Harvey sniffed and wiped his nose on his sleeve. Sir. What did I ask you to do? Harvey stared across the room through the wall ahead of him in thought. You asked me to help you carry 2 small girls. Get them to safety. To the ship. Ethan nodded slowly. And what happened when we got to the ship? As if he couldn't help himself, Harvey looked up at Ethan. Osmond said he thought they had gotten everyone they could. And you told him to get ready to push off, that you'd be right back. And then you ran off. Ethan locked eyes with him and quietly repeated his question. Why did you come after me? Harvey opened his mouth, but hesitated. He shook his head and tried again. Osmond called after you. You didn't turn back. He was cursing you, saying you were just as stubborn as your father and you were going to get yourself killed. Oscar told him you were the best chance they had. That they had to trust you. Osmond said he did trust you, but he didn't trust the dangers you were running into. That doesn't answer my question. Well. They seemed so sure of you. And the people on the boat were watching the direction you ran in, waiting for you to turn around. You were important to them. Harvey shrugged as if unsure how to further explain himself. If I could help Boyra's prisoners, maybe I could at least help some of your people. I told Osmond to worry about preparing the ship to sail, and I would worry about keeping you from getting yourself killed. Ethan wanted to believe Harvey's words. At least that version of the story meant Newburgh was a little safer. And it wasn't like Harvey was trying to find ways to get himself off the island. If he was telling the truth, they had a chance. And Ethan hadn't messed up as bad as he thought. It was an easier reality to cope with, if nothing else. So then what do you know about Boyra's intentions? He wants dragons. Same as any other power-hungry man this side of the archipelago. He heard stories of dragons here, I suppose. Think he came here specifically in search of them. So he wants dragons to control people. Harvey shook his head. His face seemed to grow a shade paler. I don't think it's that simple. He likes to watch people suffer. He likes to watch the pain in their eyes. And when the pain goes away, he likes to watch life leave them. I don't think he wants to control, I think he just wants to conquer. He shivered. I fear the fate of any man to cross him. And that's why I wanted away. Ethan could see the pleased smile on Boyra's face as he held his father to his knees before him. He quickly shook the image away. That still doesn't explain why he would lock you in a room with such an easy way to escape. Harvey sighed, still pale but much more tired. Like I said before, cocky bastard overestimates himself. That's my best guess. Ethan found himself out of questions. He was hyper-focused on one task now, talking to Osmond. He slowly turned and walked out of the cell, following the cavern back to the surface and out of the great hall. He knew Zephyr was behind him, he heard her follow him the moment he left the room. He jogged up the path to the guest quarters and found Osmond and Oscar still sitting in Osmond's room. Zephyr ran into the room shortly after Ethan. Is everything all right? Osmond asked. I need you to tell me something, Ethan requested breathlessly. Back on the island, the night we fled, when Harvey and I brought the last 2 girls to the ship. I told you to get ready to push off and that I'd be right back. After I left, what happened? Osmond blinked in surprise. Oscar looked a bit bewildered himself. I'm not. Osmond, please, I need to know what was said. He looked between Ethan and Zephyr. Well. I said you were a dumbass for running back. I tried to call you back but you didn't turn around. I said you were going to get yourself killed. Oscar said you were our best bet and we had to trust you. Which I did, mind you, I still do. I told him I did, and that what I didn't trust was the clusterfuck you were running into. And then suddenly Harvey was backing away and telling me to worry about your orders and let him worry about keeping you alive. And then he ran after you. Ethan blinked. Oscar. Oscar nodded. Yeah, that's how I remember it. Ethan felt the room spin around him. Son of a bitch. I think he's telling the truth. Notes. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm doing my best with getting chapters written, but due to some ongoing health issues the energy/time I have to write is spotty at best. That being said, I just want to assure my lovely readers that by no means do I intend to abandon this story. It will be finished, I just ask for your patience with my vastly unpredictable posting schedule. And you all have been incredibly kind and patient, so to those reading in real time as updates are released, I could not ask for a better group of readers, so from the bottom of my heart, 1,000 thank yous to you all heart. Chapter 27, Fighting Demons. Notes. This one is for you, Purpur. I know you didn't know what fanfiction is, but you knew I loved to write, and you were always so proud of me for that. You would have been so proud of how much I have written over the years. I love you, Purpur. Rip heart. **************************** TW, discussion of suicidal thoughts / attempted suicide, PTSD*********************. Chapter text. Ethan bolted out of the room just as quickly as he had run in. If Argo was telling the truth, then Ethan wanted him out of that cell as soon as possible. But was that one bit of proof enough to convince Ethan that he was innocent? The more he listened to Argo weave his story, the more Ethan was inclined to believe him. It wasn't hard to believe that Boira was a maniac, that wasn't enough proof. But if he really was trying to save some of the outcasts. Wait. He heard Zephyr jogging behind him to catch up, but he didn't stop. He needed to get back to the Great Hall. He didn't have a clue what he was going to do when he got there, but he knew that was where he needed to be at least. Zephyr caught up to him and breathlessly asked, "Wait, I don't get it, why is it a bad thing that he's telling the truth? If he even is telling the truth." He made a few frustrated sounds before admitting, "Well, it's not, if he is." "Okay, so why are you acting like it is?" "Yeah, Ethan. What's the matter? Just release the wolf into the flock of sheep. What could go wrong?" His hands curled into fists at the darkness, speaking through his thoughts again. "Get the fuck out of my head already." He nearly growled through a sigh, trying his best to keep his frustrations in check. "I don't know, Zephyr. Killing the bastard would have been a hell of a lot easier. How is killing someone ever easier than letting them live?" He stopped abruptly and turned towards her. "Because now there's a legitimate chance he's not lying, so killing him would be wrong. But I don't have proof that he's telling the truth. What if he's just a really good actor? What if he's just wearing us down until we trust him so he can escape and report back? What if he's just waiting for the opportunity to get word out to Boira? You said it yourself that you think he's telling the truth. I mean, he came to you. Voluntarily. With information. About Boira. He even knew it would put him in danger. He knew he would put a target on his back, but he came to you anyway. Yeah, dumbass, didn't you think about that? This is why she's already a better chief than you'd ever be. Maybe if the outcasts had Zephyr, then more of them would still be alive. Maybe she could have saved Alvin." His rage boiled over, and this time he couldn't stamp it back. "Don't be naive, Zephyr, it could have just been a ploy to gain my trust." Zephyr recoiled. "Excuse me. Careful now, Ethan, she's all you got left. You're doing a great job keeping that flame alive, aren't you?" Ethan could practically see the sneer emerging from the darkness before his eyes. His fists tightened until he felt the warmth of blood seeping out beneath his fingernails. Trust, such a funny thing, isn't it? Alvin trusted that the big mysterious ship wasn't a problem. He trusted that the Wing Maiden news could wait until morning. You knew, though, didn't you? You tried to tell him. But you didn't have the nerve to make him listen. You trusted his judgment. You let him lull you into a false sense of security. And now Argo is doing the exact same thing. Some people are just trying to use you. Life isn't so black and white. You can't be so trusting all the time, that's how you get people killed. Snap. Thwick. Off. Stop. Ethan covered his face with his hands, trying to compose himself. He pushed his hands over his head, brushing his hair out of his face and trying to push the darkness back with it. He clasped them behind his head and tried to breathe, trying just about anything he could think of to find himself again buried in the rage and frustrations and fear and anger and darkness and Well, I guess I'll leave you to it, then. Wouldn't want my naivety to get in the way. Apparently Zephyr shouldn't have trusted you, either. Ethan opened his eyes just before Zephyr turned, soon enough to see the heartbreaking hurt in her eyes. He felt his stomach drop. Of all the people that could say words like those to her, Ethan was probably one of the worst. He didn't need to see how hurt she was to know that. She turned her back to him and started walking towards home without another word. Zephyr, no, wait, that's not. It's fine, Ethan. She didn't turn around or stop, she just called the words over her shoulder. Just go take care of Harver. She slowed as if she debated turning around, and Ethan took a step towards her. But then she shook her head and started walking away again. Just go see Harver. He was frozen in place as if the island itself had grown around his feet. His body ached to follow her, to wrap his arms around her and tell her he didn't mean it, he didn't mean to hurt her. You think she wants you right now? You blew it, buddy. Look at her, she's practically running away from you. Stay here or follow her, you lose either way. Just like you always do. He forced his chest to pull in a deep breath through the aching in his heart. Just like that, her guard was up again like it had been the first time they met on Old Burke. Just like that, he may as well have destroyed all the trust and comfort he had worked so hard to forge between them. Poor Zephyr. She's got enough going on already without you breaking her heart. And after everything she's done for you, it's such a shame. She saves your life, and you mock her in return. Why don't you mock her some more and jump off that cliff again? I said get out of my fucking head. Ethan swung his fist and made contact with a nearby tree trunk, stifling a cry when the rough bark splintered under his skin. He felt the muscles in his arm strain under the sudden impact. The burst of pain in his shoulder and hand couldn't have been good, either. He pulled his hand from the blood-stained bark and cradled it to his chest. That was cute. Ethan groaned. The pain in his arm was fading, but his shoulder still ached. He looked down at his hand and found bloody knuckles. Even though he couldn't tell if the skin beneath the blood was discoloring yet, it definitely felt broken. All he wanted was Zephyr. She was the only thing that kept him grounded. Without her, he felt like he was falling through the air in the middle of the ocean, nothing to break his fall but the icy water below. He was so out of control he didn't know where the old him used to be. That's what Zephyr always called it. The old Ethan. Ethan wasn't sure there was a difference anymore. Or, at least, he wasn't sure old Ethan was still around. But after how he just treated her, he didn't feel like he could follow her home and ask her to do whatever she did that always calmed him down. He had to face this one without her. So right now, as much as it pained him to admit, Ethan needed to go see Harver. And he needed to give Zephyr her space. Both of which he felt physically ill about. One problem at a time. Ethan took one more deep breath, turned around, and pushed his body to the great hall. Perhaps it was the gut-wrenching guilt that was pounding away in his head, but for once the darkness was quiet, almost subdued. Ethan felt like he could think clearly for the first time today. So he needed to make a decision before the fucker came back. He couldn't ignore the fact that Harver/Argo had a lot of factors working against him. But he also couldn't ignore the fact that Zephyr had a good point. If he really was guilty, why would he voluntarily expose himself and risk captivity? And the way he still seemed to trust Ethan's every decision. Ethan's gut was telling him to trust him. But something was holding him back. You know what's stopping you? Argo killed your father. Ethan flinched. Guess the fucker came back. He said he was Boira's archipelagic advisor, didn't he? So how do you think Boira ended up on Outcast Island? Ethan grit his teeth. No, stop making assumptions. Damn it, you're better than this. As Ethan stalked down the dark corridor, he decided what he needed to do, and he was determined not to let his mind talk him out of it. He shut the dark voice out and focused instead on his instinct, doing all he could to summon the spirit, what was it his dad always called it? Hug, of his father to help him through this afternoon. Once the jail cells were in sight, he saw Hiccup and Astrid leaving Harver's cell. They quickly looked up at him once he pushed through the main door blocking off the corridor. Ethan, is everything alright? Hiccup's voice had a hint of concern, which was mirrored in Astrid's eyes. Both of their eyes caught Ethan's bloodied hand at the same time. Yeah, everything's fine. Ethan took a deep breath as he stepped up to the pair, slipping his hand behind his back. He ignored the guilt that was gnawing at him as he thought back to Zephyr. Harva first, then fix things with Zeph. He had to keep his mind clear, and worrying about her wasn't going to help him do that. I'm going to need you to do something for me. Of course Hiccup agreed without hesitation. Ethan nodded and looked at Harva's cell. Lock me in with Harva. Take the key with you. Come back to get me at supper time. Hiccup and Astrid blinked at him. Are you sure, Ethan? Astrid was clearly uncomfortable with his request. Yes, I'm sure. Hiccup hesitated. I'm not sure that I'm. Hiccup, please. I need you to do this for me. Ethan dropped his head for a moment, found himself looking at the cell door, and then looking everywhere but the cell door. I need to face this head on. And I need to not have a choice. He found himself looking at Astrid, as if he knew she would understand. She carefully watched him, and Ethan hoped she could see the resolve in his eyes. At least he hoped the resolve was there to be seen. Hiccup started to protest again, but Astrid put a hand on his shoulder, still watching Ethan. Hiccup. This is his decision. His tribe. Hiccup held his position for a moment longer before deflating with a quiet groan. Fine, but I don't like this, I hope you know. I'm posting Snotlout to guard the outer door. Not here. He'll be able to hear if anything goes wrong from out there. Hiccup took a very deep, very long breath. All right, if that's what you want. I can work with that. His eyes flicked in the direction of Ethan's hand again. Should I send for Tough Nut too? Ethan winced. I'll go see him after. Hiccup just watched Ethan, not sure what to say. Astrid didn't seem to know, either. After a while, Hiccup just slowly nodded his head. All right. Just Snotlout, then. Outer door. Just yell for him when you're ready to leave. Ethan nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me, I'm the one locking you up. Hiccup unlocked the cell door and waved Ethan inside. Ethan couldn't help smiling at the sarcastic quip. Nor could he help chuckling at the sarcastic salute Hiccup made through the bars. It almost helped suppress the shudder that ran down Ethan's spine at the metallic clanging of the lock. But nothing could have stopped the memories that rushed back as Ethan turned to face the enemy in disguise. The screaming of his men, women, children, the tribespeople under his protection that he didn't, save. The heavy weight of his father's hand on his shoulder as he entrusted what was left of the life Alvin had built from the ground up to his only son. The sea of ice staring at him the moment his body crashed into the boat deck, awaiting his orders. As the memories crashed through his mind, one after another, battering against his resolve, Ethan started to realize that Harva was the one in danger. But he was better than that, he kept reminding himself. That's not what this was about. He was better than blind anger. No done harassing me, then. Argo seemed oblivious to the turmoil battering Ethan from the inside out. His eyes were closed, body slumped against the wall and head lazily leaned back. He looked as exhausted as Ethan already felt. Ethan slowly walked to stand on the wall directly across from him. Nah, I'm not here to harass you. Harva didn't seem convinced. I see. Good chief bad chief routine then. No, not quite. Ethan groaned, using the wall for support as he lowered himself to the ground, carefully cradling his broken hand to his chest. Argo peeked through one eye, cautiously confused. Ethan rubbed the dirt off his hand on his pants and pulled his knees up in front of him, resting his arms on top. Argo eyed his bloody knuckles. Hiccup doesn't know what I'm doing, actually. I just thought we'd talk. Man to man. Argo opened both of his eyes now, distrust evident in them. Interestingly enough, Ethan thought it was an odd look to see on him, distrust. Talk about what? Ethan shrugged. Everything. Why don't you tell me about your life, Argo? Argo flinched. After a moment of hesitation, he timidly said, ye don't owe me anything, but can I ask ye stop calling me that? Ethan raised his eyebrows. What, Argo. I thought you said that's your real name. T's my given name. But there's a reason I didn't wish to keep using it. Ethan nodded. Fair enough. I'll make you a deal, then. Tell me about your life, and why you want to leave your given name behind, and in return I will keep calling you Harva. And no one else will know your real name outside of me, Zephyr, Hiccup, and Astrid. Assuming no else knows it already. Harva considered the offer while carefully watching Ethan. Eventually he nodded, if still a bit apprehensive. Perhaps it was the sight of Ethan's bloody knuckles. All right, where do ye want me to start? The beginning. Tell me everything. By the time Ethan walked out of the Great Hall, the world outside was already bathed in darkness. Most of the village was already in the hall, warming up and eating the communal meal courtesy of Rana Horferson and her team of helpers. But Ethan had other, much more important issues to attend to. Hiccup and Astrid had come together to relieve Snotlout and free Ethan. He wanted to run straight to Zephyr, but Astrid insisted that she was fine, still back at home and keeping busy. Astrid also insisted he see Toughnut first to set his hand, and that Zephyr needed a little more time. So as much as Ethan objected, he found himself sitting in Toughnut's healing hut, bracing against the pain of splinting his hand and getting interrogated, both by Toughnut himself. Toughnut's eyes were burning a hole into Ethan's head. And yet he couldn't help but be impressed at how expertly he could splint a hand without actually looking at it. So, do you want to tell me what you punched? Ethan shrugged. Not particularly. Thought so. So what did you punch? How do you know it was something and not someone? Toughnut raised his eyebrows. Was I wrong? Ethan looked Toughnut in the eye for a moment before sighing and admitting, no, it was a tree. Toughnut nodded. Punching someone wouldn't have torn up your skin this much. And, if I'm being honest, I don't think you have it in you to punch a person. Not without some serious provoking, at least. And if that was the case then I'd be splinting your hand and splinting someone else's whole body. Ethan scoffed. He could feel Toughnut eyeing him. Wanna tell me why you punched a tree? No, thank you, I'm good. Toughnut nodded. Was it the same reason you jumped off that cliff last night? Ha ha. He's got you dead to rights. Ethan flinched. Toughnut nodded, but he grew more somber. For once, he was quiet. The guilt in Ethan's chest was getting more and more overwhelming. That was a mistake. He knew he said the words, but the voice that said them sounded so foreign to him. Quiet, soft, almost timid. Afraid. Toughnut's hands paused, and he looked Ethan up and down. He felt like he needed to defend himself, but he couldn't find the words. Toughnut quietly finished splinting his hand, tied off the cloth wrapping, and leaned back in his chair. Listen, Ethan. If you're about to lecture me, you can save your breath. Zephyr already did. Toughnut chuckled. Oh, I'm sure. I know my niece very well. She doesn't hold much back. And she acts much older than she is. He felt Toughnut's eyes on him again. I think that's something you two have in common. Forgetting just how young you are. Ethan was very interested in the floor directly around his feet. I'm the chief now. I can't be the little kid following Dad around anymore. Toughnut quietly sighed. Look, he started again, voice quiet and more gentle. My point is, you're not the first person I've known to try to take his own life before the gods called for them. But you are the youngest. And, if I'm being honest, I don't want that for you. And I really hope you get to a point where you don't want that for yourself, either. Toughnut shrugged, smiling slyly. I've got a good feeling Zephyr agrees with me, too. Ethan chuckled. Ah, I see. Just trying to save your niece from some heartbreak, huh? I am a protective uncle. Toughnut laughed. I love Zephyr, just like I love all my nieces and nephews. But, seriously, and I don't get serious often, mind you, I've seen how you are when everyone is looking. You're figuring out how to be a chief, you're sorting through the things you've experienced, you're forging new relationships and building a new home, and that's all great. But when all the doors close, and you find yourself alone, and you can let down your guard, sometimes a whole different person takes over. And that version of you is the one I am seriously worried about. Again, Ethan wanted to defend himself, but he had nothing to say. Talk to Hiccup about it. If anyone understands even a little bit of what you're going through, it'd be him. Ethan rolled his eyes. Trust me, Zephyr has told you the same thing 1,000 times as well, I'm sure. She may act older than she is, but she's still a smart girl. Ethan nodded slowly. She really is. His heart begged for him to see her. His body ached to hold her. His mind cried out to hear her voice telling him that everything was going to be okay, that he did the right thing. Tough Nut's voice broke through the haze. Come back in a few days so I can take a look at your hand again. Ethan nodded. And, Ethan. He looked up out of habit, his mind still with Zephyr. Tough Nut started to speak, pursed his lips, and then tried again. I may not be as skilled at healing the mind as I am the body, but I try my best when I need to. You're a good man. And I mean it when I say I don't want to have to light a boat for you. Not because of my niece, but because you don't deserve that kind of end. You deserve to live a long and happy life surrounded by people who love you, and you have a very real chance of finding that. So I am begging you, the next time you're thinking about the edge of a cliff, or the point of a knife, or the bitter taste of poison, or whatever else your mind taunts you with, I beg you to find someone. Go to Zephyr, come get me, I don't care. But don't isolate yourself. All right. Ethan slowly nodded his head again, and Tough Nut nodded towards the door to let him know he could leave if he wanted to. He didn't have to say it, but Ethan knew Tough Nut would have let him stay if he felt the need as well. But Ethan wanted to see Zephyr, so he stood and made his way out the door and down the path leading to the Haddock home. But the genuinely concerned look in Tough Nut's eyes stayed with him, and his words echoed in the back of his mind. I don't want to have to light a boat for you. You don't deserve that kind of end. I beg you to find someone. Don't isolate yourself. I don't want to have to light a boat for you. Thwick. Snap. Thwick. He flinched. He had lit so many pyres already. Snap. Thwick. Snap. Thwick. Snap. Thwick. And yet the one flaming arrow that was most important to him he'd never get the chance to shoot. Snap. Thwick. Off. Snap. Thwick. Off. You don't deserve that kind of end, Tough Nut had told him. Snap. Thwick. Off. Snap. Thwick. Off. Neither did any of them. Snap. Thwick. Off. Snap. Thwick. Off. Especially not his father. Snap. Thwick. Off. Shhhhh thud. Snap. Thwick. Off. Shhhhh thud. 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 The door swung open, and Zephyr's annoyed face was suddenly in front of him. His good hand was raised, though he hadn't realized he was pounding on the door. Any anger in Zephyr's face washed away the minute she looked at him. Gods, Ethan, you look like shit. Why are you so sweaty? Did you run here? Ethan blinked and wiped the back of his hand across his forehead. Sure enough, his hand was glistening when he pulled it away. I guess I did. He didn't remember that either. Zephyr reached for his other hand, but stopped when she saw the bandage. She eyed him again before gently wrapping her fingers around his wrist above the bandage, guiding him inside. She sat him down by the hearth, in the same long chair they had fallen asleep in together after he'd finally broken down and relived the Battle of Outcast Island. He tried not to feel too guilty about always asking Zephyr to pick up the pieces of what used to be Ethan. He tried to convince himself that she meant it when she said she didn't mind. Zephyr walked out of the room for a moment, and when she stepped away, Ethan noticed a basket of thread on the floor in front of the fire. A torn shirt was lying forgotten beside it, threaded needle and all. When Zephyr returned with a cup and a damp rag, he apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. You didn't, she assured him without hesitation. I was just mending some shirts to try to keep busy. She held out the cup to him, and Ethan could see it was filled with water. He nodded and took it from her. Thank you, he said, taking a sip. She brushed his hair to the side and wiped down his face. He closed his eyes, the cool rag felt nice on his skin. You've got dirt all over you, she muttered, more to herself than to him. What happened? I mean, I sat on the floor of a jail cell for a while. The corner of her mouth turned up slightly. Wow, you must have really made Dad mad if he locked you up. What did he sentence you to? 3 hours, hard time. Eason chuckled, and Zephyr's smile came easier now. Oh yeah, but I got an early release for good behavior. Oh, I see. Zephyr giggled and shook her head. Seriously though, I asked him to do it. He wasn't happy about it, but your mom convinced him to play along. Zephyr paused. Wait, you were serious? Eason nodded. Zephyr looked him up and down, and Eason held up his hands in surrender. I asked him to do it to force myself to take care of Harver. If I was locked in the cell with him, then I couldn't run away from it. It wasn't doing me any good trying to think it through with just the information I already had. Zephyr's eyes flicked to his bandaged hand and then back to his face. So? Is that when that happened? Eason dropped his hands. I didn't beat up Harver, we just talked. She cocked her head to the side, narrowing her eyes and pressing her lips into a hard line. As judgmental as the look was, Eason couldn't help noting that it was quite cute. Well, that's good to know, but that's not exactly what I asked. Eason considered telling another half-truth, but he knew Zephyr well enough at this point to know that would only prolong the conversation while also annoying her. She was frustratingly stubborn that way. But he could still only bring himself to admit, no, that's not when I hurt my hand. I hurt my hand before I went to see Harver. She raised her eyebrows. What did you do? He felt himself recoiling from her stare as he sheepishly admitted, I may have punched a tree. Zephyr blinked, as if processing what he said. He was waiting for a lecture, but she just sighed instead. Okay, so what happened when you were locked up with Harver? Eason flinched. He had a feeling she would circle back to the tree issue, but he wasn't going to push it. Well, he told me about his past, about how he's ashamed of the life he's lived so far, especially the things that he's been involved in recently. He really is just like all the other outcasts. He wants to leave his old life behind, forget about Argo and the things that he's done. He thought he was going to die running from Boira, but he didn't, so now he wants to help the outcasts move on as a penance, I guess. Zephyr nodded her head, carefully listening. Do you believe him? Eason took a deep breath. I do. Do you trust him? Eason pursed his lips and thought for a moment. He saved my life, Zephyr. I have to try. I want to try. Good, she softly assured him, reaching out and brushing her fingers against his cheek. That sounds much more like my Eason. He looked up and smiled at her. But as much as hearing the words my Eason warmed his heart, his smile faltered quickly. So? What did the poor tree do to offend you? Eason flinched. Zephyr brushed his hair back again and gently took his good hand, patiently waiting for him to answer. He managed to speak after a few painful seconds. Dad. Dad would have taken him into the tribe. Harver, I mean. Even after everything, if he were still here, he would have done it without a second thought. Zephyr pondered her response for a moment. Yeah, he probably would have. He was a good man, he just wanted people to have a home. Eason nodded slowly, eyes unable to focus on anything in particular. You're right. Whenever someone came to our island looking for refuge, Dad let them in without question. He'd get right to finding them a permanent place to live. They would be considered an outcast the minute their feet hit our soil. It was a chaotic way to run a tribe, and it's the reason Harver was able to sneak in. We didn't recognize our own people all the time unless they did a lot of work alongside us. Nothing bad ever came from it, but it was only a matter of time. I tried to bring it up to Dad all the time, but he never saw anything wrong with it. Who would target a tribe full of outcasts? They kicked us out and we're not trying to get back, he'd always say. It made him too relaxed. And it got him and a lot of other people killed. He could still see the resolve in his father's face when he insisted there was nothing to worry about. They could wait until morning to consult the council. That large ship sailed past the island, it was already long gone. Odin help us, Alvin breathed. I was wrong. I was so wrong. He could still hear the ghosts of insane screams and pained cries in the distance. The fear and regret in his father's eyes still made his stomach turn. I know I'm asking a lot of you, son. But you can do this. You've got your mother's hug with ye. And I need you to preserve as much of this tribe as you can. They'll follow you. I know they will. Well, he was right about that, Ethan had to admit. Yet another thing his father trusted in that Ethan never did. Make me proud, son. The ghost of his father's arms crushing him to his chest for the last time still haunted him. It was Zephyr carefully leaning over him that brought him back to reality. She didn't say a word as Ethan swallowed back the lump in his throat and found the strength to look her in the eye. She was carefully watching him, and once he looked up she reached up to wipe a tear from Ethan's cheek, leaving her palm against the side of his face. He leaned into her hand. I'm so sorry about what I said. I never meant to hurt you. Zephyr smiled. I knew you didn't mean it, she softly admitted. I still shouldn't have said it. She made a soft noise that fell somewhere between a chuckle and a sigh and shook her head, still smiling. Her free hand rested against his other cheek and she leaned forward and softly kissed him. Ethan happily returned the gesture, letting the warmth of her touch chase away the cold chill the memories had left in his mind. As their lips brushed apart their foreheads rested against each other, and she gently swiped away another tear with her thumb. It's okay, It's all right. She leaned away enough to look into his eyes. Ethan lifted his hand to gently grasp one of her hands, both of which still hadn't left his cheeks. He turned his head to gently kiss her palm as she seemed to search for something in his eyes. She squeezed his hand. Your father would be so proud of you, you know. He froze for a moment, seeing a flash of his father's face in his mind. Make me proud, son. How did you know? He asked breathlessly with a smile, just to say something to fill the silence. Zephyr shrugged. Lucky guess, I suppose. Although, just to remind you, you were just talking about him too. Ethan chuckled. You're wiser than you give yourself credit for. And you're smarter than you give yourself credit for. She leaned over to kiss Ethan's forehead. When she straightened up again, she turned away, towards her sewing basket. Ethan smiled. Zephyr raised an eyebrow at him, but before she could ask he swallowed her up in his arms and planted a big, sloppy kiss on her cheek as he pulled her into his lap. She dissolved into laughter and Ethan's heart skipped a beat. She wasted no time snuggling into his chest and sighed happily. How did you know? She teased. He chuckled and hugged her tightly. Lucky guess, I suppose. She wrapped an arm around his back and laid her head on his chest. Ethan could already feel his body relaxing, letting the stress of the day drift off as he curled his body protectively around her. He pressed his lips into her hair, closing his eyes and breathing in her sweet, woody scent. She reached up with her free arm and rested her hand on his chest, mindlessly sliding it up to squeeze his shoulder. Ethan suppressed a moan. Gods, he didn't realize how tight his shoulders were. She chuckled to herself. I can't believe you convinced Dad to lock you in a cell with Harver. He made Snotlout stand guard in case Harver attacked me or something. He smiled and laid his head on top of hers, absent-mindedly rubbing her back. Do you think he really would have? Nah. Poor guy barely had it in him to lift his head by the time I got back there. Your parents must have really worked him over. Well, it is the most action Mom has seen since she found out she's pregnant. Dad won't let her train with the baby. She gets restless. She shook her head. Poor Harver. Ethan found himself focused on nothing again. Yeah. Poor Harver. A moment passed before he felt Zephyr's hand on his cheek again, gently guiding him to look at her. Hey. You made a good choice. Don't start to doubt yourself now. A chief stands by his decisions. Even the wrong ones. No one said this was a wrong one. Yet he finished for her. She mildly glared at him. Ethan. Ethan sighed and closed his eyes. He rested his forehead against Zephyr's. Zeph, they've been through so much. I can't let my tribe down again. You never let them down in the first place. Well then I don't want to start now. She gently gripped his face in both of her hands. You won't. She leaned in and softly kissed him, lingering until he wrapped his arms around her again. Even after their lips parted, they didn't move from that embrace. The minutes lazed past as they relished the seldom enjoyed moment of solitude, determined to steal every last second they could. But quiet, happy moments were the perfect fuel for the raging darkness lurking in the back of his mind, biding its time. She never would have been this close to you before. You try to off yourself and suddenly she's all over you. Such a fragile tie that must be. Ethan tried to tell himself that wasn't true. They'd been growing closer every day since he came back to Newburgh. Oh yes, of course. After the raid. After your father died. After your life was ripped away from you. Ethan flinched. He couldn't help but agree they never would have been this close before the raid. Ethan out of fear of scaring her away, and Zephyr out of fear of herself. And while he tried to remind himself that they had only just met, he still couldn't ignore the coincidental timing. He couldn't be happier they had moments like these behind closed doors, but that was what scared him. He was more terrified than ever that he would lose her now that he'd had a taste of what it felt like to hold her. His eyes fell back to the basket of thread left forgotten on the floor in front of the hearth. He could see it so clearly, the image of Zephyr simply mending shirts by the fire. Just an ordinary, quiet, wonderfully domestic moment that somehow felt out of place and perfectly suited to Zephyr at the same time. His heart fluttered at the thought of walking into such a scene at the end of a long day. How right it would feel to hear her ask how his day went as he joined her next to the fire. His imagination danced through every room in the big house, dreaming up a simple life for the two of them. Idly chatting about village gossip as they prepared meals in the kitchen, playfully comparing their individual baskets as they sorted out the vegetable harvest in the pantry, quietly cherishing the simple presence of each other as they wind down in the main room. He longed for a day that he might sit her down in a chair in their bedroom, pull her hair out of the confines of her typical braid, and tame her fiery locks with his mother's hairbrush. What would he do now if he lost it all before he had a chance to know that life? She leaned back and sighed. We should go get some food. Convenient excuse. Ethan was absolutely not hungry. Yeah, I should probably make sure no one noticed anything with Harver. Zephyr paused, and although Ethan couldn't see her face, he could practically hear her raise her eyebrows before pressing, after you eat, right? Ethan laughed quietly to himself and sighed. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm just worried about you. She rested her hand on the side of his face opposite of her and kissed his jaw. He immediately felt guilty again. I know. It's not like you don't have a reason. I'm sorry about that, too. Stop apologizing. You're here, and you're trying. That's all that matters to me. Ethan softly smiled and kissed her hair, holding her close. Yes. Zephyr crawled out of Ethan's lap after a few more quiet minutes and a crestfallen sigh. She grabbed her furs from the chair while Ethan stood up as well, finding some comfort in the fact that she sounded disappointed to leave his embrace. They shuddered as they ventured out into the cold, and Ethan walked with his arm around Zephyr's shoulders in an attempt to shelter her from the wind. But the closer they got to the Great Hall, the more worried Ethan was about what would happen if too many eyes saw them too close. The last thing he wanted to do was create more problems for her to deal with, or give her more reasons to wonder whether or not he was worth the trouble. So as the Great Hall came into view, he reluctantly pulled his arm away. Zephyr instantly noticed. What, now you're afraid to get caught touching me? She teased. He tried to smile back. I just don't want to make things worse for you. She snorted, which made Ethan's smile come easier. Sure, I'm certain the tribe would be absolutely devastated if their future chieftess found herself a boyfriend. She lifted the back of her hand to her forehead and continued sarcastically, oh, the horror. Ethan laughed, don't be so dramatic. She shrugged, smiling and clearly proud of herself. Hey, it got a laugh out of you. I'll count that as a win. A wave of guilt crashed over him again. How long will it take before she realizes she's tired of trying to fix you? She took a step closer and gently elbowed him. Hey. You're quiet again, what's wrong? He chuckled half-heartedly. I've never exactly been the super talkative type, you know. No, this is the in-your-head quiet. He looked down at her. You know the difference. I mean. Yeah, I guess. Kinda like how I can tell when you're doing that thing when you're stuck back on Outcast Island. Like you were doing earlier, in front of the fire. Right. She looked at him expectantly. He nodded. Yeah, I was. I was thinking about the last things Dad said to me. She nodded slowly. You get that look in your eyes like you're not really here. Like you're looking through everything. You did it a lot those first few weeks after the attack. They were nearly to the Great Hall's main doors, but Zephyr hooked her arm around Eason's elbow to stop him. When he turned to her, she met his eyes intensely. You barely had that look on you the last week or so. But since Harver walked into council I don't think that look has really left. At all. Eason didn't know what to say. He knew she was right, she had to be. Between fighting off the darkness and getting lost in his memories all day, he could barely remember anything outside of the interrogation and talking to Zephyr. She interrupted his thoughts. I'm not asking for an explanation. I'm realizing more and more that I'm really scared to lose you. And I know you went through a lot of really difficult things, and if there's anything that I can do to make things easier for you I want you to know I'm here. And I really care about you. She blushed and looked away. Even though I tried to keep you shut out at first. Back then, yeah, all I could think about was what the tribe would start to think if I let myself get close to you. I mean, people have been asking Dad when they would start looking for suitors for me for years now. But I don't care anymore. Their opinions about my life will never matter more to me than you do, not anymore. Yet again Eason was speechless. She had fully overwhelmed him now twice in the span of one day. It almost felt absurd how quickly the tides had turned, almost making him question the sincerity of her words. But how could she be lying? How could she fake the concern and care in her eyes? Eason didn't want to be wrong either, to be frank. He was finally seeing the side of Zephyr he had wanted for so long, he wasn't about to let his fucked up brain ruin it now. She bit her lip and looked to the ground. Look, I know I kinda sprung all this on you a little last night, and I'm sorry about that. I'm sure you have a lot on your mind right now, and you're obviously hurting, or else you wouldn't have. You know. He reached out and brushed her hair behind her ear, and she smiled and looked up at him. I just don't want to hurt you, he admitted. Well. Then don't leave me, she requested softly. Leaving you would kill me for sure. He brushed her cheek with his fingers. I'll do my best. Promise. He nodded. Promise. She studied his eyes for another moment, and she seemed satisfied with what she saw. She nodded and smiled at him and carefully wrapped her fingers around his hand. Is this okay, at least? He looked down at their hands and couldn't help smiling a little. He nodded. Yeah. Okay then, she said with a smile. She gestured towards the hall entrance with her head, and when Eason nodded she started leading him that way. Eason bit his lip. So? You're calling me your boyfriend now? He caught her smiling at the ground. Yeah, I guess I am. She looked up at him. Is that okay? He chuckled. What, do you think I'm gonna say no? She giggled like a little girl. Just as they stepped up to the door, Eason spun her into his chest, resting his hand on the small of her back and leaning in for a deep, long kiss. Zephyr slid her hand up and behind his neck, wrapping her fingers up in his hair. When they broke apart, Zephyr blinked a few times as if she was trying to clear her vision. She looked a little breathless, her cheeks flushed. He couldn't stop admiring how beautiful she looked. She seemed to find her bearings again. She moved her hand from the nape of his neck to his cheek again, a gesture that was quickly becoming Eason's favorite. Are you ready? He kept his focus on her eyes, her touch, her smile. He slowly nodded. She nodded back in encouragement. You can do this. I'm right here with you. Okay. He nodded again. Okay. With a warm smile, She laced her fingers between his, lifted them to her lips for a gentle kiss, and pushed open the door to the great hall. "I'm right here with you." He wanted to tell her everything, things he was sure she already knew and things he was sure she didn't. How broken he was, how he was afraid he'd never be the man she wanted him to be, how dizzying it was to try to digest everything that had happened in just the last 2 days, let alone the last year. He almost felt like he owed it to her to be that honest, especially after she had just poured out her own heart to him. But something in his chest, or his mind, way back in that dark corner, watching and waiting, wouldn't let him do it. Instead, all the emotions from the day kept circling in his mind as the darkness repeated the phrases that cut the deepest. You try to off yourself and suddenly she's all over you. Such a fragile tie that must be. Apparently Zephyr shouldn't have trusted you. Careful now, Ethan, she's all you got left. Losing her would kill you for sure. But beneath the darkness, if he really dug down deep, if he tried his hardest to focus, he could recall Tough Nut's words. I beg you to find someone. Don't isolate yourself. You don't deserve that kind of end. Chapter 28, Snoggletalk. Notes. Hello my lovely readers, I have returned. Asterisk 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 TW, panic attack asterisk asterisk asterisk. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Astrid looked over her reflection as she stood in front of the mirror in their bedroom. She carefully smoothed out the wrinkles in one of her 2 formal gowns, the one specifically made to be more forgiving to a pregnant belly, and chuckled. You know, part of me really believed Willow would be the last time I wore this gown. She turned her head to shoot Hiccup a playfully accusatory look. I should have known better. You love your babies too much. Hiccup guiltily smiled from where he sat on the bed. All right, I admit, you caught me. He secured his prosthetic and took his place behind Astrid in the mirror, kissing the back of her head and gently squeezing her shoulders. But I am not the only one. Astrid failed to suppress her smile. Only because they're yours. Hiccup reached around her and cradled her belly in his hands as he kissed the sensitive spot directly behind her ear. Astrid closed her eyes and shivered. Hey now, you already have another one in there. And we don't have time, we're going to be late. Astrid opened her eyes at just the wrong time to catch Hiccup's mischievous smile half hidden in her hair in the mirror. Are you trying to convince me or yourself? He swiftly moved his hands to tie the ribbon under her bust behind her back. She watched his eyes in the mirror catch her pregnant belly as the ribbon tightened her dress and accentuated it. His smile lovingly softened, no doubt imagining the moment he would hold his 5th newborn for the first time, and Astrid's heart melted. Of course, it quickened a moment later when he turned his back to grab the rest of his clothes from the bed, giving Astrid a wonderful view of his very round ass. She decided to distract herself. Well, it's a good thing you love them so much. This one may actually come close to your birthday. Hopefully not too close, that'd still be a little early. You know, how is it that Spro is the only other one that came close? Considering your birthday is 9 months before mine. Oh, that's easy. I spent 3 of my birthdays already pregnant. But Willow was definitely your birthday. Hiccup snorted. Are you sure it was my birthday night specifically? Astrid rolled her eyes. No, she was absolutely not sure. Hiccup and Astrid definitely didn't need the excuse of special occasions to do anything remotely intimate. In fact, Astrid was very concerned she hadn't been able to carry children at all during the first year of their marriage. It wasn't until after their first anniversary that she found out she was expecting Zephyr, and it absolutely was not for lack of trying. After all, there was a reason they wanted their home a bit further back into the trees than most of the village. Then another thought occurred to her that dampened her mood. She bit her lip. And it'll definitely be here before the first thaw. Hiccup fastened the last buckle on his vest as he glanced up at her. The baby. Astrid nodded, then half-heartedly smiled. You won't miss it. Hiccup smiled in understanding, eyes falling to the floor. Ah. Well, you know how much I love our babies. I would have postponed the trip to make sure I was here. Astrid couldn't find it in her to smile at his attempt to lighten the mood. You say trip like you're not talking about starting a war. Astrid, we've talked about this. He took her hands in his and guided her to the bed, sitting next to her. His voice was gentle but firm. Boira started the war when he targeted the wing maidens. The outcasts were all but wiped out because we were unprepared. We can't wait around until he comes to us. Astrid sighed and leaned into his chest. Hiccup didn't hesitate to wrap his arms around her. I know. We were so spoiled with 15 years of peace. And with the baby. You won't be going with me, he finished for her. He hugged her tighter and let out a sad laugh. Trust me, I don't want to be running into battle without you. But maybe it's for the best. The kids need someone here. In case you don't come back. Astrid lifted her head to make sure her husband knew how much she hated the implication. Until I do come back, he corrected. He brushed away a tear that escaped Astrid's eye. You have nothing to worry about. Snotlout will have my back. He winked. Astrid sniffed and wiped away a few tears herself, chuckling. Gods, I never thought those words would actually bring me some peace. Well, he did learn from the best. He kissed her forehead as she took a deep breath, shaking off the extra strong pregnancy emotions. Brushing her hair away from her face, he added, besides, I'm afraid Zephyr is really going to need you here. Snotlout may have my back, but I already know Ethan will be to my right. Astrid leaned her head on Hiccup's shoulder again. He wrapped his arm around her back and reached over to rub her belly. Are you going to make her acting chief? Hiccup sighed. I haven't decided. That's a lot of responsibility and stress to put on her. But I don't want to put too much on you either, so close to giving birth. And it might take her mind off of worrying about Ethan. It's just a title, love. I know, but titles mean a lot to her. We'll split the responsibilities if it's too much, no matter who has it. And I think you're right, she'll need something productive to keep her busy. And, in the case that Hiccup didn't make it home, Zephyr would have to take his place permanently. Astrid knew they were both thinking it. But neither of them would dare say it aloud. Hiccup shivered, likely shaking off whatever horrible image his mind had shown him. Well. That's not important right now. There's not much we can do about it now, so let's take advantage of the calm before the storm. Let's enjoy this night with our family and friends, and let the hard stuff wait a while. Astrid shook off her own horrible mental images and sighed heavily. We'll see how long I last. This baby is only a few months away, and I'm definitely feeling it. Hiccup smiled and stood up, offering his help to his already exhausted-looking wife. She smiled in thanks and took his hands, letting him pull her to her feet. Say the word and I will bring you home, milady. I look ridiculous, Ethan said, fidgeting with the cuffs of his sleeves. Look, I really appreciate what your parents are doing, but outcasts don't exactly do formal. Dad's formal wear was the one pair of pants he let me patch the holes in. Zephyr couldn't help looking him up and down. The green tunic was brand new, freshly sewn by Zephyr herself, and complete with bronze cuffs that were carefully forged by Grandpa Pygobber. They boasted a swirled design around the top and bottom edges that Zephyr couldn't help but relate to her own personal chief's seal, adorned with an engraving of the outcast tribal seal that faced outward when his arms were at his sides. Over the tunic was a leather vest that was clearly made by her father, complete with multiple buckles and straps across his chest and stomach. Of course, new pants and boots completed the look, the pants sewn by Astrid and boots crafted by Snotlout. Hiccup had even offered his old chieftain furs, though Ethan insisted that was too much. That conversation did not end the way Ethan thought it would. Ethan was very clearly not used to the nicer, fresh materials. Zephyr was shocked he hadn't ripped it all off to crawl back into his familiar and overly worn everyday clothes yet. I don't know, the leather looks very alluring on you. His face turned bright red and his hands stilled. Oh. Ah. Zephyr laughed, quite pleased with herself. Come here, let's fix whatever mess is going on with your hair. Oh yes, combed hair was definitely part of Dad's formal get-up, he grumbled as he sat down. Hush, you. Just trust me, all right? He flinched. Just don't do anything too intricate, please. I suppose that means I'll have to go with Plan B, Zephyr thought to herself. Just trust me. He sighed heavily. You know I do. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this, he added in a low grumble. Zephyr smiled as she brushed through his hair. You're going to have fun, I promise. Remember my birthday. Burkians throw some impressive celebrations. No offense, Zeph, but your birthday could have gone a bit smoother. She rolled her eyes. Sure, the whole announcement part. But the party was a great time. He turned around in the chair to look at her, pulling the top half of his hair out of Zephyr's hands before she could secure it. Fish legs ended up on the Great Hall roof. I didn't even know the Great Hall had a roof. I mean, I figured it did, at some point, but it's also carved into a mountain. That's not the point. The point is your brother has concerning talents. And I've never exactly had to represent my tribe like this before. And after everything that's happened, he slowly turned back around and sat properly in the chair again. It just doesn't feel right without Dad here. Zephyr's heart ached. She set the brush down on the floor and wrapped her arms around Ethan's shoulders from behind him. I know it doesn't. But look how far you've come, he'd be so proud of you. She kissed his cheek, and she caught him smiling the slightest bit. I know I am. He reached up and squeezed her arm. Thanks, Zeph. She kissed his cheek again and stood up, pulling the top half of his hair back. Besides, you don't have to worry about nothing. He's obnoxious, but he knows there's a time and place. Zephyr, he gave spittle out a pastry with a bug in it. Zephyr refrained from smirking. And Spitaloot deserved that. He'd been bad-mouthing me all night, and nothing had enough of it. You, on the other hand, he likes. So you have nothing to worry about. Oh, I see. And I'm sure you've had extensive conversations with him about this, he teased. Zephyr's cheeks flushed. She was suddenly incredibly focused on braiding the locks she had just finished securing. Actually. Yes, I have. Ethan started to turn his head, but Zephyr chided him. Looking straight ahead again, he asked, what do you mean? Well. Let's just say that Nothing is very stealthy, and he knows the whole island like the back of his hand, so he's very good at spying when he wants to be. See, that's the part that I'm a little concerned now. Zephyr dropped the piece of his hair she had tugged on and finished off the big rope braid. Anyway, he loves when a lot of people visit at once and cause chaos because it's the ultimate test or something like that. For example, my birthday. She tied off the bottom of the big braid and moved to Ethan's side, planning to add a few tiny braids around his head and leaving it at that for the night. You and your dad were the two guests of honor he didn't know, so he was intrigued. And he saw you defend me. Ethan looked confused at first, but after a moment of sorting through his memories he seemed a little stunned. Oh. He blushed again. And he told you. She shrugged. He tells me everything. It wasn't until after the wing maidens came, though. She finished 2 tiny braids on his left side and moved to his right. Her curiosity got the best of her, and she asked with an amused smile, did you really tell him to pull the stick out of his ass? Like, to his face? Ethan groaned and closed his eyes. Oh gods, he really did tell you everything. Zephyr laughed. Well, it made a good impression on Nothing. And I guess it helped me see that you really did mean all the things you said. Ethan smiled. I guess I need to give Nothing my thanks, then. Zephyr finished off the last of the braids and stood in front of Ethan. There. You look great. Ethan stood and managed to hold his composure for a few seconds. But he quickly started fiddling with the large bronze cuffs and pulling at the leather vest. It's itchy. Is it supposed to be itchy? Zephyr rolled her eyes. It's not itchy, you're just allergic to responsibility. Ethan held his hand over his heart in feigned betrayal. Oh, you wound me. Zephyr laughed. I'm just joking. Go on ahead of me, I still have to get myself ready. Ethan groaned. If I have to. He grabbed Hiccup's old furs and threw them over his shoulders. This just feels so weird, he mumbled. Are you sure you don't need any help? As if realizing what he had said a moment after he said it, his eyes widened. I mean, I know you can dress yourself, that's not what I... Ethan, it's okay, I know what you meant. Zephyr laughed. She reached up and clasped the furs into place. I'll be right behind you, I promise. He took a deep breath. Right. Okay, I'll see you soon. He leaned over and gave her a quick kiss before bracing himself and walking out into the cold. She made her way up to her room and found her blue and black dress from her birthday lying on her bed next to her chieftain's furs. She took a deep breath. It's okay, this is going to be fun, she tried to convince herself. She pulled her hair out of her braid and brushed it out with her fingers. She quite liked the way it waved and fell on its own, so she decided to wear it down and keep things simple. And then she did everything in her power to not remember all the things that happened the last time she wore the dress she was putting on. So much had happened since then, they had all changed in so many ways. It felt like years had passed. And yet when she turned to the looking glass, she still felt like that little girl playing dress up again. Though the feeling only lasted for a moment, and the longer she looked, the more she felt like a true chief's apprentice. She shivered. She was done with the looking glass for tonight. Ethan was sitting with her family, as he typically did these days. He had a protective arm around Willow, who was balanced on his lap eating her food. Nothing sat between Ethan and Valka, and across the table was Hiccup, Spro, and Astrid. To Ethan's right was an empty space, waiting patiently for Zephyr to join. Snoggletalk was a less formal event on Newburgh, though the Haddocks still made sure to dress their best, so the head table was instead used to display the beautiful banquet Grammy Runner had spent the last month planning and prepping for. As Zephyr made her way to her family, Ethan quickly caught sight of her. He froze, eyes wide as his mouth turned up into an adoring smile. Zephyr couldn't help returning the smile as she made her way around the table. Willow spotted Ethan's face and giggled at him, but Ethan didn't notice. "You look so beautiful," he managed in a breathless voice. Zephyr blushed and her smile turned shy as she took her seat next to him. "You've seen this dress before?" He leaned closer to her. "Wanna know a secret?" He kissed her cheek and whispered into her ear, "You were just as beautiful then, too." "You're so cheesy," she whispered back, but her smile betrayed her. She quickly kissed his lips, and Willow giggled again. "I see you have your new best friend with you. Do I have some competition?" She smiled wide at her sister and tickled her. "Never, you're the only woman for me," Ethan said. But then he leaned down to Willow and loudly whispered, "It's okay, you're still my girl, too. Just don't tell your sister." Willow had, for some reason, grown very attached to Ethan over the last few months. Zephyr had a nagging suspicion it had to do with the fact that he was eerily calm amidst the battle preparations, and Willow noticed how tense everyone else was. But that was a problem for later. Zephyr didn't mind, truth be told, she kind of liked the look of a baby on his lap. Interesting. Turning to the rest of her family, she found her father very focused on his food but smiling nonetheless, and her mother watching the interaction fondly with her head on Hiccup's shoulder. "Babe, remember when we were still cutesy like that?" Hiccup chuckled. "Milady, we had sword and axe fights." Astrid sighed and looked off into the distance. "Those were such good times." Ethan chuckled and pushed an extra plate towards Zephyr. "Here, I grabbed your favorites before they ran out." She looked down and found a plate neatly stacked with honey-glazed parsnips and carrots next to a healthy serving of Grammy Runner's specialty lamb chops, along with a big slice of honey bread slathered in butter. He then slid over a small bowl of skyr topped with honey and berries. It was in fact all of her favorite foods, making Zephyr smile even more. "Oh, thank you, anything for you." The great hall was already loud with music and conversation. Ale and mead were generously flowing, and for the first time in months, Newburgh was buzzing with the vigor that it used to have any day of the week. Yes, everyone knew what was coming as soon as the ice melted, but perhaps that was what made celebrating tonight all the more important. Troubles were left at home, and nothing could sour the mood. Valka had gotten up to talk to Runner, and the pair were smiling and laughing over Runner's amazing feast. Rough Nut was sitting at a table happily watching Nutmeg dance on Fish Leg's feet next to her. Tough Nut was telling some crazy story to a group of men with outrageous animation. Snotlout and Minden were giggling over feeding each other little bites of food. Even Spitlout and his goons were enjoying their drinks with jolly expressions. War was the last thing on anyone's mind. "Ethan, look at what I made." Spro nearly stood up on his seat to show Ethan a roughly woven sheath. Ethan's eyes lit up with amazement. "Oh, wow, buddy, that's so good. Did you make it all by yourself? Spro sat back down, a little sheepish now. Daddy helped me. He said that one day, he said I'll have my own knife to carry in it. That's awesome. Do you think Nothing will teach you how to use it? Well, I hope so. Nothing smiled at his brother. Of course I will, Spies. We can use it to gather herbs for Uncle Tough. Spro's jaw dropped. Really? Yeah. Look, I have one already. He held up his own knife safely sheathed in its own leather pouch. I'll teach you everything Tough taught me. Ethan leaned over to study the knife. Hey, man, that's a cool blade. Did one of your uncles make it for you? Nothing smiled proudly. No, actually, Dad gave it to me. It was his growing up and he said I could have it. After you found it sneaking around in our room, you mean? Hiccup narrowed his eyes, but he was smiling. That's the knife I used to free Toothless after I shot him down. Zephyr chuckled and leaned over to Ethan. Storytime, she joked. It was a late raid that night, but there was so much fire it could have been the middle of the day. Hiccup started. Astrid shook her head with a fond smile as Willow, Spro, and Nothing all leaned in close. Occasionally, Willow would turn her head with an amazed expression to Ethan, who would mirror her amazement back to her before she swiveled back around to watch Hiccup. Zephyr had heard the story a million times, but she'd be lying if she said she was sick of it. Her father was an amazing storyteller, after all. But this time she couldn't help watching Ethan's expressions as he heard the story for the first time. In between the over-exaggerated glances he gave Willow was true interest, and his smile was effortless and genuine. The last few months had been hardest on him, and Zephyr knew he still struggled with whatever it was that had driven him to jump into that freezing spring. But lately those sparks of the old Ethan started to shine through again, and Zephyr had only felt more and more love for him as he healed. He fit so naturally into her family, it was hard to imagine him anywhere else but right here by her side. I looked at him, and I saw myself. So, I knelt down and cut the ropes instead. And Toothless could have turned on me right then and there. He shrugged off the ropes and towered above me, staring me down the whole time. I was cornered, I had nowhere to go. But instead of attacking me, he shrieked as loud as he could, inches from my face. And then he pounced off through the trees. And then you passed out. Astrid finished for him. Everyone at the table burst into laughter as Hiccup rolled his eyes and waved his hands in a weak surrender. Valka walked back up to the table and started laughing as well. Oh my, what story have I missed this time? Dad passing out after he set Toothless free, Zephyr explained. Hiccup jumped to defend himself. Hey, if the unholy offspring of lightning and death itself screeched like that in your face, you would have passed out too. I didn't know he was tame as a rabbit yet. The last few words came out in chuckles. Willow reached up for Valka, who lifted her up out of Ethan's lap. Oh, your father has come a long way, hasn't he? Don't tell her that, she still thinks I could always conquer the world. Astrid patted his leg, encouraging him in a placating voice like she did with the little ones. Of course you can, sweetie. He gave a withering look to Ethan. See what I have to deal with. Ethan chuckled and stood, hands raised in surrender. Don't pull me into this, I said nothing. He smiled and held out a hand towards Zephyr. Would you like to dance? Zephyr smiled with raised eyebrows. Oh. Would you? He shrugged. Well, you've already got me dressed the part, I might as well act like it, too. Zephyr nodded approvingly, a proud smile gracing her lips. She took his hand and let him lead her to the empty space in the middle of the hall. You know, if you're that uncomfortable, just say the word and I'll take you home. Ethan mocked a shocked gasp. Oh, how scandalous. Zephyr laughed. Well, I never said I was traditional. My dear, we all know just how untraditional you are. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her close. It's one of my favorite things about you. Well, that was smooth, she muttered, ignoring the tingle in her chest and the gentle blooming of warmth beneath her smile. She never got tired of hearing him call her my dear. Ethan smirked as his hand fell to her waist. Oh good, I still have something going for me. Zephyr rolled her eyes as she naturally rested her hand on his chest and followed his lead. Stop that, you have plenty going for you. You know, if you had offered to take me home when I got too uncomfortable, I wouldn't have left in the first place. Of course. Why do you think I waited until we got here? Oh, now that's just rude. Zephyr laughed again. Come on, are you really going to tell me this isn't worth it? She lifted her hand on his cheek for just a little more emphasis. He smiled and rested his forehead against hers. No, this definitely makes the scratchy shirt worth it. Hey, I made that shirt, you know. Oh, that's right, that explains a lot. What did Tough Nut give you to wash it in, Poison Oak? Zephyr laughed. No, sorry, he was all out. Sure. He stifled Zephyr's giggling with a gentle kiss, never breaking stride. When he leaned back, his smile was soft. I love your hair down like that, by the way. Thanks, I thought I'd try something new. He nodded approvingly. It suits you. Try as she might, Zephyr couldn't resist a shy smile. Ethan kissed her forehead as they glided across the open floor. Plenty of others danced around them as well, and Zephyr noticed the myriad of interested glances they got as they passed in and out of her periphery. But she couldn't care less. Ethan hadn't smiled so much in months, his laughter was easy, his eyes adoring as ever. That was all that mattered to Zephyr. At some point Nuffink and Nutmeg danced up together far too close to Ethan and Zephyr, clearly trying to get their attention as they mocked the older pair's dancing, earning a laugh from not only them but everyone nearby. Aren't they a cute couple? Ethan joked. Zephyr laughed. Believe me, that's the last thing on their minds. Nuffink is far too free-spirited for that right now. What about Nutmeg? Zephyr shrugged. Maybe. But she hides it well. Ethan raised his eyebrows and chuckled. Oh, like you used to. Used to? You're right, I've been giving you far too much freedom, she teased. She started to walk away from Ethan, who laughed and twirled her back into his arms, her back against his chest, holding her tight. They laughed and swayed as he kissed her neck through her hair, and all Zephyr could think about was how right it felt. She turned around again, close enough to feel his warm breath on her face. He gently brushed a few stray hairs from her eyes and his smile turned concerned. Are you okay? Zephyr hadn't realized her smile had fallen. Zeph, what's wrong? Over the last few months, Zephyr had been working hard to trust her instincts and let them drive her actions. Sometimes that meant catching on to Ethan falling into some deep darkness in his own mind and pulling him out of it. Sometimes it helped her settle a dispute between two Burkians over pointless issues like sheep eating someone else's grass. Sometimes it meant trusting a gut feeling. This time, it meant fighting through her fears and breathlessly admitting, I love you. Ethan looked like a gentle breeze could have blown him over. Zephyr didn't let his pause faze her. Now that she had finally said it, she loved the feel of the words on her lips. She softly smiled and touched his cheek. I love you, She noticed tears in his eyes now as the breath he was holding escaped his chest. He smiled and replied in barely a whisper, I love you too, Zeph. She wiped a tear from his cheek, ignoring her own welling up in her eyes now and softly chuckling. It's okay, I'm here. I know, he smiled, chuckling himself now. I'm just glad you said it twice. I didn't think I heard you right the first time. He kissed her deep and slow, arms tight around her. She wrapped her arms around his neck, standing on her tiptoes. She broke away from his lips for a moment and whispered, Happy birthday, His eyes fluttered open in surprise. It's technically tomorrow, he laughed. How did you know? Zephyr shrugged. Uncle Fishlegs has records on everyone. I was curious. Ethan shook his head and smiled. Any other surprises from you tonight? I think I might let you off the hook if you kiss me again, she teased. Ethan complied right away, squeezing her gently as he continued to kiss her. Zephyr didn't care that 3 whole tribes were watching. She just hoped he'd never let her go. The rest of the night seemed to fly by faster than a night fury. At some point the entire Haddock family was dancing together. Hiccup was holding up an incredibly exhausted but still standing Astrid. Nuffink and Nutmeg were generally goofing around and clearly enjoying themselves. Spro was dancing like a true gentleman with Zephyr. Willow was giggling in Eason's arms as he swung her around. Gobber and Valka, shortly joined by Vidar and Runner, were doing some version of what Zephyr assumed to be traditional dancing, albeit very sloppy and drunken. Eventually Snotlout and Midden joined as well, quickly followed by Rough Nut and Fish Legs. Tough Nut had dragged an uncomfortable Eret into the mix, and the two eventually joined Nuffink and Nutmeg. For the first time since Nuffink could walk, the night went without a single disturbance. Late in the night, Astrid finally gave in and asked Hiccup to take her home. Willow had fallen asleep on Eason by that point, and since Hiccup had to carry his wife home, Valka offered to carry Willow. Spro trudged behind with sleepy eyes, complaining that he didn't want to leave but unable to say it without yawning. Nuffink and Nutmeg had disappeared, predictably, but Zephyr didn't hear screaming, so she figured it was fine. Zephyr went with Eason, who decided to take advantage of being free from Willow to check on his tribe. Much to his relief, they were doing well and enjoying the night just as much as everyone else. The outcasts were mingling with the Burkians, and the wing maidens were enjoying entertaining the outcast children, no doubt giving the outcast women a much-deserved break. Osmond and Oscar were huddled around Harver, apparently encouraging him to introduce himself to a young woman he was nervously eyeing across the room. Eason leaned close to Zephyr. "Do you think we should go save him?" Zephyr laughed. "Nah, I kind of want to see how this plays out." As if he heard them, Harver locked eyes with them as he was sweeping the room. He gave them a withering look that begged them to help, but Eason pretended not to notice. He decided then to enthusiastically wave and gave him a thumbs up, and then Zephyr pulled him through the crowd to the edge of the room as they both laughed hysterically. Soon after, they decided it was time to turn in for the night, leaving a party still in full swing for most of the island. As they pushed through the doors of the Great Hall, Eason wrapped an arm around Zephyr to shield her from the cold. They both shivered as the icy wind raked against their faces. "I still feel ridiculous in your dad's old furs, but I have to admit, the warmth is nice. I still think you look very nice in chieftain furs. I know you don't feel like it, but you make a good chief." He scoffed, then sighed. "Thanks, but it still doesn't feel right. I guess it doesn't help that I only have half a tribe." "Half a tribe that is fiercely loyal to you," Zephyr reminded him. Eason nodded. "Dad did tell me they would follow me." Zephyr freed an arm to wrap it around Eason's waist. "He was right. They adore you. I mean, look at how well they handled the situation with Harver." "Most of them don't know there was a situation with Harver," Eason reminded her. "And the ones that do didn't give your decision a second thought. They trust you." Eason was quiet for a while after that. Eventually, Zephyr asked, "What are you thinking about?" He didn't answer at first, but Zephyr let him take his time. "We're only half a tribe, Zeph. Less than that, really. There's only a couple dozen of us left. Hell, 9 of them are kids. And we have nowhere else to go. It's been bothering you a lot again, hasn't it?" He didn't have to answer. Zephyr knew he had been agonizing over what to do with his tribe since they were brought back to New Berk. It only weighed more on his mind the longer they stayed. "I feel like they'll be disappointed in me if I take the easy way out and just give them up to Hiccup." Zephyr didn't hide the shock from her face. "All right. Well, there's a lot wrong with that statement, for starters." "No, there's not. It would be the easy way out, and it would mean giving up. It's not giving up if it's the right decision for your tribe. And they wouldn't be disappointed if they know you're just trying to protect them. I mean, it's not like you're going to leave them, you'll still be here for them." Eason didn't say anything. And Zephyr really did not like the feeling she got because of it. "Unless you're not planning on coming back after the thaw." And just like that, she had finally spoken her greatest fear. She didn't necessarily mean to say it, but it was out there now. And the tired sigh Eason gave in response didn't make her feel any better. "Listen, before you say anything, I'm not stupid. I know you're going to go with Dad and the others to fight him. And you don't even have to explain yourself, I understand why you would want to. And that's why I'm not even going to try to stop you. But, Eason, I would be lying if I said that I was okay with it." At this point the Haddock home was in view. Instead of answering, Eason just said, "Let's get out of the cold." They walked into the home in silence. As they hung up their furs by the door, Zephyr said, "Go change, I'm sure you want to get back into your normal clothes." Ethan paused but couldn't bring himself to look at her. Zephyr sighed. "It's all right, your clothes are still in my room, I'll wait down here." He hesitated for another moment, but eventually disappeared up the stairs. Zephyr sat patiently in front of the fire to warm up. Unfortunately, being alone in the silence did not treat her mind well. He didn't say anything in response. He couldn't even think of something to say as she rambled on. She watched him slowly heal over 2 months, finally starting to believe he would be okay. She wasn't stupid, she knew he still had plenty of work to do, but he was finally starting to smile and laugh again. Was it all just an act? Or was he taking solace in the fact that the end was in sight? Even worse, the end of Boira, or the end of himself. By the time Ethan came back down looking a bit more comfortable, Zephyr could feel herself spinning wildly out of control. He stepped into the den where Zephyr was sitting, but she couldn't look at him. She was afraid that whatever expression he had on his face, whatever words he said, would be the point of no return. So before he could do anything else, she quickly stood, muttered, "I'm going to change," and hurried past him. But by the time she reached the top of the stairs, she realized it was too late. Her hands were shaking as she closed her bedroom door as quietly as she could. The shaking was bad enough that she struggled and fumbled with her dress. She tried to talk herself down, but she felt like she was suffocating. Putting her clothes back on only made the pressure in her chest feel heavier. She could feel the sting of tears in her eyes, but the rest of her face was numb. Why didn't he just tell me I had it all wrong right away? She stumbled to the door, not able to make her feet obey properly. As she reached for the door, she clearly saw Ethan lying before her, blue and cold and still as a rock. She saw it so clearly that she tripped backwards, falling against her bed. Her ears rang and her chest heaved as she tried to pull enough air into her lungs. "No. No. Please breathe. Please." Ethan didn't move, his chest remained still. She could see red seeping through his clothes. "Breathe. Breathe." She lowered herself to the floor and squeezed her eyes shut, but Ethan's lifeless body still lay before her. He wouldn't open his eyes, he wouldn't move, he wouldn't breathe, fucking breathe. The ringing in her ears grew louder. She felt a cold breeze tear at her skin, she curled up into a ball to try to feel warm again, but it wasn't working, and her chest felt tighter and tighter, and the room seemed to grow dim around her. She heard something far off in the distance but she couldn't place the sound, all she could focus on was Ethan still not breathing in front of her. "Fucking breathe already, please, please just breathe, please. Zephyr, please breathe, come on, sweetheart, hey, look at me." Her eyes snapped up, and Ethan's eyes were open. He had a firm grip on her shoulders. "There you are, that's right. Look at me, just focus on me. Don't close your eyes, please, Ethan, just keep breathing. Hey, listen to me. You're doing it again, you're shaking like a leaf and you're breathing funny, you're going to pass out if you keep doing that. I need you to breathe, okay? Just breathe." He cradled her face in his hand and wiped away her tears with his thumb. "I'm right here, you're okay. I'm not going anywhere. Take a deep breath for me. Nice and easy, just like this." He took a deep breath himself and let it out slowly. Zephyr tried but the air caught in her throat, her chest tightened again and she just ended up breathing faster than before. "Hey hey hey, look at me, look at me. In through your nose, honey. In through your nose, out through your mouth." He breathed deep through his nose and slowly pushed it out through pursed lips. He took her hand and placed it over his chest, holding it there and gently squeezing it. "Here, do it with me, okay?" She could feel his heart beating hard under her hand, and then his chest slowly rose and fell as he took another breath. She stared into his eyes and took a shaky breath in time with him. Over and over and over, until her own breaths were as steady as his. The ringing in her ears faded and the room grew brighter again. "There you go. There's my girl. Come here, I got you." He leaned against the bedpost next to her and helped her crawl into his lap. His arms wrapped tightly around her, securing her to his chest as he kissed her hair and gently rocked side to side. He whispered in a pained voice, "Gods, why do I keep hurting you? Zephyr focused on his heart beating against her ear. She wanted to reassure him, but he spoke before she was physically able to speak. I swear, I'm not trying to get myself killed, Zephyr. She swallowed and slowly nodded her head. I'm glad to hear that. Her voice was thick and raspy. They stayed quiet and Zephyr willed her body to stop shaking. It was better, but she still felt unsteady and out of control. But you're still going, she finished for him. He hesitated, still rocking her in his protective embrace. He kissed her head again before admitting, yes, I am. Osmond and Oscar already said they will be too. Osmond talked to the guys and they're all on the same page. He stilled and leaned back again, softly caressing Zephyr's arm. How are you so calm about it? She felt him silently sigh. Because that bastard has to die, Zeph. And I know it sounds horrifying, but I have to see it happen. I have to know that, without a doubt, that son of a bitch is gone for good, that he will never have the chance to hurt any of us again. Zephyr could feel herself starting to tremble again. Hey, hey. Zephyr, look at me, honey. I need you to hear this. He waited patiently for her to lift her head and look him in the eye. His gaze was unwavering. I love you, Zephyr. I love you so much it hurts sometimes. That alone gives me all the reason I need to fight like hell out there. I need you to understand that I am not trying to leave you. I have every intention to come home to you. But he can't keep getting away with this shit, and I have to make sure that he doesn't. He brushed her hair out of her eyes. Gods, I love you, though. And I will be thinking of you every moment I'm gone until I have you safe back in my arms. And I know that you will be terrified the whole time I'm gone, and I hate myself for knowing that and going anyway. I just have to pray that you understand and that you will forgive me for it one day. Just please don't give up on me, okay? She sniffed and wiped the tears from her cheeks. Never. I promise. Ethan wiped away a last tear that escaped from her eye. Then I promise I won't either, all right? Zephyr nodded. He leaned in and kissed her once, twice, a third time for good measure, and then pulled her back into his chest. After some time, once Zephyr's breathing had settled back down, she asked, do you need to go home? Do you want me to? She shook her head and admitted, no. He kissed her hair. Then I think I'll just stay here and hold you, if that's okay. Zephyr wasn't going to argue. At some point she must have drifted off, but when she opened her eyes again she could feel Ethan's chest gently rumbling as he hummed a song. She didn't move, afraid that he would stop, so she tried to keep her breath steady and listened to the melody. She must not have done a good job because he paused a few moments later. Sorry if I woke you, he whispered. You didn't, she lied. That's a nice song. I don't recognize it. Nana taught it to me. Dad said it was a song my mom used to sing. I don't know if that's true or if he was just trying to give me something to make her feel close, but I guess it doesn't matter much either way. You could ask Atali, she would probably know. He nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe I will. He was quiet after that. She looked up at him. Will you sing it to me? He smiled and nodded. Zephyr kissed his cheek as he began to softly sing in a rich, deep voice. My mother told me / someday I will grow / big and strong and brave / clever, cunning, bold / join the Viking men / noble life I live / fighting for our homeland / stand with the good men. He looked down at her again, and Zephyr smiled. She laid her head back on his chest, hoping he'd continue. He started rubbing her back and then continued singing in the same soft voice to her. My mother told me / someday I will lead / oversee with pride / see to village needs / take my father's place / noble chief I be / govern with a fair hand / rule many tribesmen. My mother told me / someday I will buy / a galley with good oars / sail to distant shores / stand upon the prow / noble bark I steer / steady course to the haven / human foemen. My mother told me / someday I will fight / in battle I will fall / Valhalla in my sights / bravely carry on / noble sword I wield / leave behind the homeland / join all the brave men. We'll just ignore that last one, he added. Zephyr smiled. I'd prefer that. I like it, though. Even if your mom didn't know it, it says a lot that your dad wanted you to. Yeah, I guess it does. She turned her face up to look at him. I think your mom would love it, too. He smiled. Yeah, she would. Are you sure you don't have to go? He smiled. You can kick me out anytime you need to. No, I don't want you to go, she chuckled. But I don't want you to stay just for me, either. I'm okay now. He softly kissed her lips. My place is with you, my love, so long as you'll have me. Zephyr smiled wide and snuggled into his chest.